Welcome to the February 20th, 2026 California Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. My name is Wendy Strack, chairperson of the board. Before we convene, I'd like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing the board's laws. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. The Board of Behavioral Sciences will be holding this public meeting in person and via the WebEx platform. I'll announce when we are accepting public comments on the various issues. For each public comment period, we will first be accepting comments from participants in the audience present in the room. Then the moderator will open the lines as appropriate so that the remote audience members can comment. Each commenter will have 2 minutes to comment. I'd like to note that we will not be discussing agenda item 23 today. Moderator, would you please provide the audience with instructions on how they may participate during the meeting at the appropriate times?
Absolutely. When public comment is called for, we're going to show a visual on the screen in most cases. At the time, we're going to ask everyone on WebEx to tap the hand button to raise their hand. For our dial-in users, that means dialing *3. And then we'll call on people in the order we have requests. As stated before, people will be given 2 minutes to speak, and I'll give you a 15-second warning before your time expires. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Moving to item 8, call to order and establishment of quorum. Members, during the roll call, please introduce yourself and let the public know whether you are a public and licensed member. Christina, please call the roll.
Good morning. Rebecca Thies.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Thies, and I'm a book member, pronoun she, her.
Eleanor Uribe.
Good morning. Licensed clinical social worker, present.
Justin Huff.
Justin Huft, LMFT, he, him.
Kelly Ranasinga.
Good morning, Kelly Ranasinger, pronouns he, him, public member.
Wendy Strack.
Present, public member.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd.
Present, LPCC member he, him.
John Sovek.
Good morning, John Sovek, LMFT, pronouns he, him.
Susan Friedman.
Good morning, public member.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Yes, good morning and welcome everyone. I am a public board member. My pronouns are she, her.
Lorez Bailey.
Good morning, Lorez Bailey, public member.
For the record, Christopher Jones is absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We're going to be looking at taking a lunch break as close to 11:30 as possible today, and that'll depend on where we are with the agenda. Moving on to item 9, introductions. Before staff introduces themselves, I'd like to note that we have our new legal counsel here.
Oh,
no?
No, sorry.
Okay.
I
Never mind.
apologize.
Okay, we'll just go with
Yeah.
board staff. Please introduce yourselves.
And I apologize for that. Steve Sodergren, Executive Officer of the board.
Okay.
Roseanne Helms, Legislative Manager for the board.
Shelley Ganaway, Board Counsel.
And Christina Kitamura, Administration Analyst. I'm not on camera for all of you watching.
Great. Now's the time for the public to introduce themselves if they'd like. This is completely voluntary. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to introduce themselves?
Hi, good morning. Ben Caldwell, MFT.
Good morning, Bindu Mukamala, Policy Manager with the NASW California chapter.
Thank you. Moderator, is there anyone online that would like to introduce themselves?
We have at least one, and for everyone else, now is the time to raise a hand if you'd like to introduce yourself. You can do so by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3. And we're going to start with Sarah. Hold on just a moment. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, Sarah Carrasco, Licensure and Compliance Specialist with William Jessup University. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Next, we have Carolyn. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Carolyn Cummings. I'm an LMFT as well as an adjunct professor for California Baptist University and a CE provider through CAMP. I'm very glad to be joining you all this morning.
Thank you. And finally, we have Shanti. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning. Apologize for not being able to make it in person today. My name is Shanti Ezrin. I'm the State Government Affairs Associate with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists.
Thank you. And those are all of our requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 10, consent calendar. Discussion and possible approval of the November 20th and 21st, 2025 board meeting minutes. Does any board member wish to remove or edit any items from the consent calendar? Being none, do we have a motion?
Dr. Walker, I'll make the motion to approve the November 20th through 21st, 2025 board meeting minutes.
Susan Friedman, second.
Thank you. Are there any comments from our in-house audience participants? Nope. Moderator, are there any comments online?
All right, everyone, we have a motion and a second on the floor. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. Christina, can you take the vote?
Yes. Lorez Bailey,
Aye.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Abstain.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Rebecca Thies.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to item 11, board chair report. And first is board member attendance. The report shows the board member attendance for board meetings and committee meetings during the last fiscal year. Please let staff know if you believe there are any errors. As a reminder, attendance at board and committee meetings is important. Next is future board meetings. You'll see in the materials a list of the upcoming board meetings for 2026. These are proposed dates and may change in the future. After this meeting, please let staff know of any dates you may have a conflict with. And then for our member update, Dr. Annette Walker, Kelly Ranasinga, and Justin Huff completed their interviews with the Senate Rules Committee. And these appointments are expected to be up for confirmed in March 2026. Okay, do we have any questions from our in-house participants? No. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand on agenda item 11. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 12. Next on the agenda is the budget update. We have.
It's me now.
Wait.
Okay, let me switch it up. I'll take it.
Okay, Steve, this will be you. Okay.
I appreciate it. Hi, good morning. Per our budget, we have an authorized budget of 14.6 million and authorized reimbursements of 50,000 for fiscal year 25-26. We began the fiscal year with a reserve balance of 26.2 million And we project that the collection this year of 24.9 million in total revenue by the end of this fiscal year. So our expected revenue, 24.9 million. Current estimations demonstrate that the board may fully expend its appropriation. However, board staff is currently looking at to identify areas for savings to minimize this possibility. And we think we found them, and we're working towards making those adjustments. So we look like we will be fine. With the potential savings, the board projects a total expenditure of external costs to equal 15.2 million by the end of the year. And this will leave us with the board at an ending reserve balance of 35.9 or 27.2 months in reserves. So, and as you know, we will be addressing the reserves with our fee change, which will be going into effect July 1st. So staff is working on that to implement the fee change and the lower fees. Any questions?
Any questions from board members? Okay. Seeing none. Oh, Justin.
Thank you, Steve. Have we received the state loan that we gave out a year or two ago? Have we received payment for that yet?
We have not received that back yet. And that's not calculated into the reserve fund or any stuff. Yeah. So.
Great. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from our in-person audience? Seeing none. Moderator, do we have any questions online?
All right, WebEx, we have now is the opportunity to make a public comment for the budget update. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, do you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 13, the personnel update. Steve, we'll turn it back over to you again.
Excellent. Thank you. So the board has currently 66.7 authorized positions. We had reclassified 2 positions during the last quarter. We had a staff service analyst position, which is now an analyst 1. Actually, we'll be using different terminology because CalHR switched the staff service analyst and the assistant government program analyst classifications. So they're now referred to as analyst 1 and analyst 2 positions. So from now on, you'll hear those terms instead. We also had a GPA, assistant government program analyst that was now has been it was been reclassified to a analyst 2. So it kind of clarifies the adds more clarity to our structure, our personnel structure. So promotions and new employees, the administration unit, Sarita Riso was a limited term position. She is now permanent as an analyst 2, and she's our special project and research person. She's out there in the audience somewhere. There you go. Hi, wave. And then in the consumer complaint unit, Katrina Martinez returned to the board as an analyst 2, and she is an enforcement analyst. And additionally, we have the most newest hire is Devin Sant, who came to the LPCC and LCSW licensing unit and will fulfill a licensing support managed services technician role. And she began in January, just actually 2 days ago, I think. Yeah, so actually that would be February, 2 days ago. We had some departures. Kaylin Nove departed from the criminal conviction unit, and in the registration unit, Vanessa Gare left in January. Current requests that we have out there to fulfill vacancies, we have one in the criminal conviction unit, an analyst 1 position. That application is open. We have a consumer complaint investigator, an analyst 2 position. Interviews have been scheduled for that. We have a position in our examination and cashiering unit for a managed service technician, and we are accepting applications for that position. And lastly, in the registration unit, we have a office technician, and an offer has been extended to a candidate. So we're all looking at filling up our vacancies. So that is the personnel report. Are there any questions? Yes.
So are these vacancies for already approved positions, or if we gained any of those other positions you were kind of applying for to see if we could add more staff?
We haven't really gained any new positions. What we've been working on is where I think I may have explained before, but we had positions that were limited term, what Sarita was like Sarita's position. And so the limited terms that you'd say you can hire on a limited basis for about 2 years. And so our concern was we wanted to make those permanent. So we've been working and have been able to make most of those positions permanent now. So that was our goal, and we're getting almost, I think we might have one more limited term to look at. So
Yeah, that's great news. I just wanted to ask, with the new titles, Analyst 1 and 2, are those reclassifications or is it just new titles?
pretty much new titles. So. And it does add clarity because it's like, because the original is from staff service analyst. We have an MST staff service analyst, AGPA. It's just 1, 2, and 3. So it makes it more clear. Yes.
This is just sort of for my own edification. How does one have 66.7 positions?
That's a good question. I wish I could give you a real good answer on that. It's usually based on some people we might have a half-time position, or it's the personnel years. So, and then we also have we have a retiree in the system also, and so that kind of messes with that number too. So that's not going to be a full position. Yeah, partial person walking in, yeah, in a partial cubicle. It's nice. It helps out now.
No other questions from the board? Do we have any questions from our in-house participants? Being none. Moderator, do we have any questions from folks online?
WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand on the personnel update. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so moving on to item 14, the licensing update.
Yep.
We have Lisa Sigelski, the board's LCSW and LPCC manager, presenting the update today. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm Lisa Sigelski, licensing manager, and I'm doing this report on behalf of Carl and Andrea, my peers. This is a more comprehensive report than you've seen in the past, so please let me know if there's too much information or not enough. First, we'll start off with the population report. As you can see, the board has increased by about 5%, 4.5% over the second quarter last fiscal year. We continue to grow. The biggest growth is in the LPCC category. We're getting a lot more LPCC licensees this year. Supervisor population, this also continues to grow. We grew 12% over the last fiscal year. And again, the LPCC supervisors are also growing 23%. And these are people who have self-certified that they meet the supervision requirements. Registration applications received. In the second quarter of this fiscal year, we received an increase of 239 applications for the initial and subsequent registration app. This is an increase of 11.19%, and the ASW unit had the biggest increase of 18.19%. Total applications processed, and this is between both the approved with no deficiencies and approved with deficiencies. The registration unit processed a total of 4,481 applications. That's up from 3,344, or a 34% increase. It's really important to note that we were able to do this because of the additional headcount we got in 2024. So not only did registration, they processed more apps, but they also reduced their processing times at the same time. So the apps approved with no deficiencies, that means the application was fully complete at the time of evaluation. Nothing had to be brought in, no additional documents, and they were able to do 35% more of those apps this fiscal year. Those registration apps that had a deficiency, meaning we need more docs, typically a deficiency will be missing transcripts, the transcript's not complete, or a program cert's missing. For those, we completed approximately 30% more. The processing timelines, as I mentioned earlier, they were reduced for the registration unit based on the fact that we did get more headcount, and they also cross-trained their evaluators to help out with the workload. So as you can see, APCC went down by 18 days, which is astronomical because those are one of the hardest applications to evaluate based on the education required. For the processing times for deficient apps, I'd like to point out that it's really hard for us to control that number because we're waiting on the applicants to send us the documents, and we have no control over when they're going to do that. So it is important to note, though, with APCCs, we were able to reduce that, and I think that's also related to the additional headcount. We got another evaluator to help out with those that were able to process them as they came in. The registration unit also handles multiple group email accounts. And so for this last quarter, this fiscal year, they did 9,809 emails, which is up about 8% over last year. Any questions about the registration unit? Okay, so the licensing unit. One thing I didn't include in here is some overall numbers, and overall with combined between the in-state apps and the out-of-state apps, the licensing unit received 2,508 apps in the second quarter of this fiscal year, which is 546 more than last year, or a 27% increase. So we are continuing to get more applications in. For the in-state applications, and these applications are typically people that have a previous relationship with the board, whether they have a registration number or they were previously an out-of-state app that didn't follow through with the app and they're coming back. That's considered an in-state app now. So the licensing unit had an increase of 537 apps this fiscal year, or a 30% increase. And for the out-of-state apps, these are true out-of-state licensees that have never had a relationship with the board, no registration number, did not previously apply. So those applications are also up by 5%. So for the total applications that we processed between the in-state, out-of-state, we processed a total of 2,603 applications, or an increase of 2.9%. For those licensing applications that were in-state and approved, we approved 2 more than last year. For those that were deficient, again, there was a slight increase of 10%, so we were able to approve 10% more. For approved applications out of state, never registered with the board in the past, again, there was only two applications more. And for those deficient, that was a decrease. And it could be that some of these people just abandoned it and decided not to follow through. Sometimes we do see that with out-of-state apps, that we tell them they need to do this education or they need to do these exams, and they choose not to go through with it. And then they'll come back 2 years later as an in-state app. The processing times have not decreased. They have increased slightly, but we are working on that. We have been moving staff, cross-training staff. LMFT is one of the hardest licensing applications to work on, so we do move staff to LMFT more frequently, which is why the LCSW moved up. we're cross-training with them. So we hope to see that go down soon. For the processing time with deficient apps, again, we don't have control over this. You will see that LEP increased dramatically, but that when I looked at the numbers, that is because there are a couple LEP apps sitting out there that were deficient and they've just left them there. They decided not to pursue it. So 365 days counts against us on these. The licensing unit did handle over 5,000 emails. It is down a little bit, but we do handle all of these group email accounts while processing applications and doing the deficiencies at the same time. So that is the licensing report. Any questions?
Kelly.
Does handling the emails kind of suck up your time, or what is the thing that sucks up the most time for your units?
Well, what we have done is we rotate the handling of the emails between the evaluators. So, each evaluator handles it for one day every week. They do take a lot of time. A lot of them are questions that are available on our website. And frequently we're sending them to our website, but we're also providing the links to the pages, to the publications or the applications that they need. There are some that truly do need an email. They're asking about supervision. That's a lot of it. They're asking about supervision ratios. How much supervision do I need? What hours do I need? So with the emails that we answer, we have frequently updated our frequently asked questions. We've also been working on a supervisor FAQ based on the questions we get in the email accounts. So we'll be coming out with that soon for just supervisors to answer all the questions that they have.
Thank you. That was my next question, and you addressed it.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a extend a heartfelt thanks to this report that you just provided us. Very comprehensive. I
knew you'd like it.
Oh my God. I spent the majority of my career in higher ed in college or graduate admissions. I oversaw all of the graduate programs, and we were processing applications such as you're mentioning. And these are unsung heroes. Some people have no idea what it takes to cross-train evaluators what you share with us today, they have really moved the needle. 30% increases in some of the areas. So I want to give a shout out to the registration and the licensing unit for this hard work that they've done. What you just asked, Kelly, about those emails is significant because to get that increase, they're also at the same time monitoring the phone calls and making sure that they're getting those questions answered, because sometimes it's for those applications that are missing documentation, and they're wondering, where am I in the process? So I just thank you, Steve, for bringing this forth to the board in this manner.
Yes.
So that we're really getting a bird's eye view of what's going on. And really, they're unsung heroes. And I just want to, again, extend a heartfelt appreciation to the hard work that they're doing, and appreciate that they really, really did move the needle. What a great way to start the new year.
Thank you. I know our team greatly appreciates that accolades. We do. Thank you.
And don't thank me, thank them. Thank you. No, it's all them.
Questions?
I've got a question. This is just about the gains that you've made. I think I heard you say you're attributing the increases to greater headcount.
They increase in processing the number of apps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I was just curious if there were any other system changes or technology changes that you would also attribute these positive changes to, or is it really purely headcount?
At this time, it is headcount. We are working to do more efficiencies online, but that hasn't come into fruition yet. So at this time, it is cross-training, getting more headcount. I'm sure that the registration unit, they've been working on their efficiencies on how they're going to process. So that probably does come into play. I know with licensing, it does a lot. But we haven't really changed a whole lot. Until we can get our stuff online, we're kind of in a status quo at the moment.
Can I add?
Thank you.
The one thing, though, they did do, and it was a project that they took on, was one of the big time commitments is reviewing all the hours of supervision And so a couple, and we were literally using calculators and
Oh.
I mean, calculating hours and ratios by computer and looking at, they get a form for each application can have, 3 to 6 to 7
I've seen
supervisors.
15 supervisors.
15 supervisors. And so they did this initiative where they actually had created a Excel worksheet that evaluators can use that actually does the calculations for them, points out where there might be deficiencies, and really kind of streamlines that process. And so that's been put in place for the licensing unit.
I have to give shout out to Sparkle Moss, who started that initiative, and then Andrea, who refined it for the LMFT, and then I took it on for LCSW. So it's second nature to me now, but yes, we use an Excel spreadsheet, type everything, to do the data entry, and it really spits everything out for us. It helps a lot.
Yeah. And the next initiative is to put that application of some sort online so that it automatically calculates. And so that's our next step. And you'll see that in one of the task items for the strategic plan.
Well, let's do John and then Nick and then Susan.
So I want to join Dr. Walker in thanking you and your group and your department for doing just amazing work. I also want to thank you for you giving the report today because it gives a face to something that often when we hear from the EO has an anonymous, like, out there energy, and hearing your passion, your excitement about it really makes a difference for us.
And I can answer your questions.
Where Steve's like, I'll get back to you on that. I do have a question for you, though.
Mhm.
So looking at these pretty dramatic increases in the licensed population, the registration population, are you already identifying some things that we or Steve can do to start getting ahead of that? Because this increase is not necessarily timed to one of the normal increases that we see, like around graduations and the year after graduations. So what are you anticipating your department might need?
We are currently working on a BCP, and based on the numbers that we're putting in there, we do anticipate we're going to be receiving more analysts, provided it goes through. Short of that, cross-training and continuing to, train the staff on what we can do better. They have ideas too, so anything we can do to streamline them would be helpful. Better technology. We've been in meetings for other things like that.
Dr. Walker would like you to help us all understand what the word BCP means.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The acronym.
Budget change proposal. Yes,
Thank
to
you.
get more head count. We're trying.
And also as a member of the Outreach and Education committee, I also identified something that we might be able to help you with in some of our initiatives is looking at all these deficiencies in these initial registrations. That could be a simple education and outreach thing. So perhaps as you're identifying things that are like trends, like people keep sending us before their transcripts are ready or schools are not doing this, maybe making sure that information filters down to our committee so we can add that to our task plan.
That's another thing, the licensing unit and registration unit does outreach quite frequently. In fact, there was one just yesterday, I think it was yesterday or Wednesday, where registration was doing. So we do try to get that information out to the schools because they frequently ask us to do video presentations, and we do answer the questions. We have a couple on April 1st, in fact, coming up for multiple places. So, and we bring up that. Exactly. So we'll bring them to the committee, though. We'll definitely.
Because I think we would want to be an ally with you in that journey.
We appreciate it.
Kelly, that's it.
And then Nick and then Susan.
So great minds think.
I also, oh, I'm sorry. Did you say Nick?
Nick and then you.
Oh,
I was just gonna say, great minds think alike. John asked my question is as you're thinking about the growth, what things would you feel like continue could be an asset or an area that we could support you? But I'll let Susan talk because John's been great.
well, I just want to echo all of the thanks that people have extended to you because it's an extraordinary job. And it is true that having you here is really important because we never know how this work gets done.
Yeah.
But you did mention that you had managed to reduce the time by 18 days. That is extraordinary. And I'm wondering if you foresee even more, because one of the biggest criticisms that we receive all the time is, why does it take so long?
Well, and registration was great with the extra head count. They were able to reduce that. I would like to say, we understand the frustration with the processing times in the licensing unit. There is so much paperwork to look through. I mean, they send in big stacks, and so we're trying to figure out ways to maybe make the application process easier, less cumbersome, not so much documentation where we won't have to look through stacks of documents. So maybe in the future, we're hoping to lower that.
Because I think when you say 18 days, that's
a
not,
lot.
nothing. That is a lot.
It is.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Kelly, and then back to Nick.
So this is, I mean, and what's happened here, this would be an example of a public-facing video that we could put on our website addressing some of the deficiencies that, because it's wonderful that we're doing video presentations to our school, but it's sucking up a lot of time and it's not efficient. So getting this information out to a mass audience of our applicants and registrants would be really good. And also, I really appreciate you coming here. I think, and I echo all the comments of the board members. This really puts a face to some of the information.
Many people may remember my face from Facebook, so. The Facebook Live report, yeah.
In the outreach committee, that's what we are looking at, like we were talking about, is, trying to do high impact with low resources. And one of the things that we are looking at right now is doing the Instagram Reels with short videos and Instagram Reels, and then also more online, live events, whether it's online or in person. So that's what.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we got.
Nick.
Yeah, this is a related question, not specifically about the numbers here, Stephen. It's directed more towards you, but it does tap to what you were saying about questions around supervision or supervisors and stuff like that. Is there any reason why we can't identify supervisors through some type of icon or something on DCA's website that's tied to them, so that if I was an associate, I could go and say, yes, this person's met the requirements to be a qualified supervisor? My guess is that most folks probably don't really know if their supervisors are even qualified. I'd be curious to know how many people get turned away because they don't actually have a qualified supervisor.
I would like to point out that all supervisors self-certify.
Correct.
We do not review the documentation.
Correct.
Other states do review before they put a supervisor online. So I think we have to be careful of that because they are self-certifying.
Correct. And I think that's my point. That's a huge issue.
And we're kind of having those discussions right now, looking at that process of just the self-certification and seeing the value of a review process. And I think we did bring up, when that was coming through, we did have the discussion about putting the designation online. At that point with the board, they were kind of hesitant to put that designation on there. I honestly can't remember the reasons why, but yeah, that's something I think if we were going to do that, we can definitely have that conversation. But yeah, I think we would have to change the process. It might require more staff time too, though, but something we can bring to the board.
Yeah, I think that would be really important.
Right, thank you. Any other questions from board members? Okay. Do we have any questions from our in-house audience?
Good morning, Ben Caldwell, MFT. I just wanted to second the thanks to our presenter for coming and sharing the information about deficiencies and that kind of thing. I understand it takes a while to change in terms of technology, so that the applications, for example, could be fully online. Is there anything that is potentially in the offering as a partway measure in the meantime to reduce the burden on staff for data entry? I'm thinking about like optical character recognition software, that kind of thing that could handle some of the data entry and automate the calculations. Is that a possibility, or is that feasible?
Well, we are currently working on what we are kind of pursuing and looking at right now is a system that is similar to, I don't know if you track your hours, and it's basically where an applicant or a registrant can go in, enter their hours in, the supervisor comes in, approves the hours, and that is collected into it consolidates all the hours down, and it actually alerts the candidate whether they need more hours or if they're going over, if they don't have the correct ratios and stuff. And so I think the optical recognition probably be, I think we're putting more time into that, is to getting an actual platform that registrants can use and that can basically calculate the hours for the board. And it would just be an approval process of looking to make sure. And also the added benefit of a registrant understanding where they are in the process. And that's what we're kind of pursuing now. So you'll be hearing more about that in the next few board meetings. So
That's great. Thank you. And just in regard to Mr. Boyd's question, the requirement right now for supervisors, the basic requirements is that they be licensed for 2 years and they do the initial supervisor training. Those are things that I would think would be relatively easy to verify, but I am mindful of the timeline where supervisors can do that initial supervisor training up to 60 days after they have begun supervising. So somebody could sort of be legally supervising before they would meet that sort of training qualification standard. If there were to be, an effort to mark somebody's license online to say that they are a supervisor, if it came with that kind of disclaimer that they are self-certified,
15
that would
seconds.
seem to be the simplest approach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just jump in to piggyback on what Ben said and what Nick had raised. The reason, so we had talked previously about having a supervisor list on the website. At the time that we were discussing that, there were concerns from some supervisors that they did not actually want to be included in a public list. So we would, if we were to go forward with that, we'd have to consider the legal sort of consent ramifications of doing that.
I think though, everybody's license is public already, so I'm not quite sure I would follow that line of logic.
I think there was concern, like maybe they were supervising just one person. They didn't want a public list where people would be contacting them necessarily looking for supervisors.
If I may answer a little bit too, as a previous supervisor who no longer supervises, I still get emails on a regular basis asking me to supervise. So if I were on a public list, having been certified as a supervisor, that would open up that traffic line immensely too. And my time is valuable as well.
Great. All right, thank you. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand if you don't have it up already. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. And the first request we have is coming from Sarah Carrasco. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Yes, hello. Sarah Krasko, William Jessup University. We just really wanted to extend our appreciation to the licensing and registration unit, primarily the team, Steve, the outreach committee, for all of the resources that they've committed and made readily available to the schools and to registrants. I know that, or I've just observed over time that it seems like there was a push to get this information out to the schools, but I just wanted a voice, at least for our end, that we found that the information is extremely readily available across multiple platforms. The resources are fantastic, in our opinion. You just simply need to go look for them or sign up for the alerts or view the Facebook posts, but it's incredibly helpful. And so I just wanted to voice that we've had, I believe, 0 deficiencies strictly by relying on the board's resources. So we just really wanted to voice that. Also wanted to voice our appreciation for the quicker turnaround times. It's a significant difference. Our students have noticed that difference, and it's helped with the continuity of care for them and for their clients. So kudos on that. We are just so excited about that. We'd also like to thank the team for the timely response to inquiries via email. Our students, registrants have found very quick turnaround. Myself also in reaching out to the board just for clarification, make sure that we're following protocols, extremely thorough responses, professional, and we just can't say enough about that. So we're just extremely thankful. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our only online request for public comment.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much again for being here. We really like to have you here.
No
Thank
problem. I'll be upstairs listening.
All right, moving on to item 15, the examination update. And Steve, we have you for that.
I don't know how I'm going to follow that, so but I will give the update. And the hope is to keep including more staff kind of in the update report. So for the examination report, we administered 5,998 exams, which was a 13.8% decrease from the first quarter of last year. And we are starting to track the out-of-state applicants and their exam process. So if you're an out-of-state applicant, most likely, or most of them will have to take, well, all of them will have to take the law and ethics exam. Some might have to take the clinical exam. So we're starting to track that just to kind of get an extra numbers there. And you can see that the totals decreased slightly. We had 294 out-of-state applicants taking exams. So that was from the second quarter. First quarter was 294, and in this second quarter, we had 259 exams administered. Between October and December, there were 5 workshops were held, and this included LEP item writing workshop, an LMFT clinical exam construction workshop, LCSW occupational analysis, and an LPCC occupation analysis. And there was 2 sessions that were included in that. Some news for ASWB. They will launch updated exams. And what these exams do, they consolidate the content areas instead of, there's currently 4 content areas. That's going to be reduced to 3. There will be fewer questions overall. And there will be more, there will be more application-based questions, kind of clinical questions on how you would apply your judgment on those. And then they are still going to retain this 4-hour timeline for those exams, even though the questions have been reduced and there is fewer content areas. So it helps out the candidates to really be able to think about each question and appropriately respond. We had some changes to Pearson VUE. They are rebranding themselves as Pearson, and they are modernizing their candidate web experience. There's a new account management system that launched in January, and there's going to be some future improvements that will involve scheduling and registration workflows, so that should help out candidates when applying for the exams. And also to kind of really help them with the communication between the different states. They are going to have email boxes committed to each state. So it's going to be help with the organization there and the communication process. And that is the news I have for the examination.
Okay, do we have any board questions? The exam? Okay, do we have any in-house comments?
Ben Caldwell, MFT. Thank you, Steve, for this report. And apologies, Dr. Boyd. I called you Mr. Boyd before. I left off the doctorate. I'm sorry about that. Just a quick question about the ASWB exam pass rate information. I don't have a proverbial horse in this race. I'm not a social worker. My company doesn't do test prep for social workers. But I noticed that pass rate is awfully low. And it doesn't sort of stand to reason that half the social workers who've done all the stuff to reach the point of the clinical exam would be unqualified for independent practice as assessed by the exam. I was curious if board sees that as a problem and what's being done about it, if so.
We will be looking into it to see if we can identify any reasons. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx.
Oh, I'm
now is-
sorry. Okay, hold on that. We'll go back to board comments. Sorry.
Steve, can you just clarify what looking into it means? Because this issue has come up a couple times since my stay on the board where there's an unreasonably low pass rate. And I am unclear what looking into it actually looks like.
It would be reporting to the board next, what we can find and reporting. I can't really say what, looking into it is confirming with ASWB, seeing if they have any reasoning behind that and reporting to the board. I think that's where the sometimes like we did, we miss out with reporting back to you what looking into it. So I think it's reporting to what we can find. And then if that's not sufficient, then we can continue to.
Well, should we expect a follow-up in the next meeting then?
In May, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Eleanor, go ahead.
So I was just thinking, Ben, for bringing that up, and because I was also noticing that it seems like we have an increased amount of applicants for LCSW. So if our rates are low, then we want to try to address it. So thank you for looking into that.
Yeah.
Any other board comments? Okay. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise your hand if you would like to make a comment on the examination update. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. So we'll move on to item 16, the enforcement update. And Steve.
That is me again. So for the consumer complaint unit, we received 715 complaints. That was 10% lower than from Q1 of last year, but up from 50% from the second quarter of the year. Does that make sense? Nope, doesn't make sense. So 10% down from compared to Q1 of last year. It was down 10%. I'm gonna have to look at that again. Sorry.
Compared to this time last year, it was down 50%.
50%, yeah. So my notes, hold on. Let me go here. Hold on. Sorry here. I was trying to let me just go off the report. Apologies. Thanks for the wait. So let's see here. So the complaints received this quarter is approximately 50% more than the number of complaints that were received in the second quarter of fiscal year 24-25, which was 483. I'm not going to rely on my notes. Additionally, based on the numbers of complaints received for the first 2 quarters of this year, we are looking at to receive about 3,000 complaints this year, which is an increase. For the probation unit, we had 11 new probationers. In the criminal conviction unit, we had 273 criminal conviction cases that were received by the board. 268 cases were assigned for investigation. 193 cases were closed after investigation, and which included 14 application denials, and 16 cases were referred to the Attorney General's office. The number of conviction cases received this quarter is approximately 23.5% more than received in the second quarter of fiscal year 24-25. And based on this volume, for the first 2 quarters of this year, we are projected to receive 1,076 criminal conviction cases, which would put us at an approximately 9.8% increase from the last fiscal year. For continuing education audits, the continuing education audits have been completed for the renewal cycles that ended in June 30th. A total of 44 continuing education audits are currently pending for renewal cycles that ended in July 31st. And during the second quarter, a total of 40 citations and fines were issued for failed CE audits. And those range in anywhere from $150 to $1,200. And the frequent cause for a failed audit currently is a lack of response to the board's audit letter. And the second most common reason was due to either a 4 to 6 hour deficiency out of the 36 minimum requirements. We're starting the supervisor audits, so this is kind of a test. We're kind of moving into that area, and we began that last month or about the month before. And a total of 26 audit letters were mailed in December 2025 for licensor who designated as a supervisor in September. Of the 26 supervisors audited, 2 did not respond to the board's request letter, and 5 more licensees failed the audit, and 19 supervisors passed the audit. So a total of 26 letters were mailed in January, and with 10 audits still pending. And of the 26 supervisors audits for the October period, 15 have passed the audit and 1 has failed. So there is work we have to do there. So we wanted to see what would come out of that, and that definitely raises flags for us to say, what are we going to do now? So that's what we're looking at on what we were talking about earlier. Maybe this needs to be a review process instead of an audit process. So that's what we're looking at. And the enforcement emails, as you can see there, they receive a lot of emails, but the actual emails that we received have been significantly down from last fiscal year. And I'm not sure the reasons for that. It could be people are, sometimes if we have better information out there, hopefully that's it. And they're reading our information so they don't have to, so their questions are answered, but I'm not sure, but it's down from last year. So that's good. And questions, please.
All right, thank you, Steve. I'll get to Nick. I'll just kind of comment on the supervisor audit. You know, it's a small sample size so far, but in that first batch to have, you know, basically 20% of the supervisors fail their audit, that certainly raises some red flags. I know it's a small sample size, but
yeah.
not a good early indication. But Nick, if you have any.
Yeah, I guess I had 2 questions, one about supervision, but I do want to go back to the projected criminal convictions. I'm curious how you project that. How do you come up with that estimation?
They're looking year over year growth. I think we get a percentage of what we see as the growth over the year, like 4 years or such. And that's what they're using to kind of project that. So
And are they criminal convictions that are happening amongst all licensees and registration holders? Is that sort of what that is? I guess I'm not quite understanding that fully.
So when we're doing those estimates, those forecasting, like I said, we're looking at like for the consumer complaints, that's for both of them, criminal conviction, like I said, we look at like a 4-year average.
Okay.
And really the projections, I mean, it's just there for us to look at to kind of maybe assess what we're going to have to look at it by the end of the year. I mean, operationally, it really doesn't, affect us. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just, overall though, it's just recognizing that there is an increase, and that's what we're probably going to be faced with, so.
Okay. And then certainly want to just echo the concerns with the supervisor audits. I find it a little interesting that there's some blind faith that supervisors are, that people are approaching supervisors, going through all these hours, and not really knowing if supervisors meet the requirements, right? So I think we have this really big gap between what we're saying we're doing versus what we're actually doing as a board when it comes to ensuring supervisors are qualified and eligible to be supervisors. I could tell you, if I was an associate doing all of this work and I go and submit my stuff to the board and all of a sudden my supervisor is not qualified, I'd be really upset about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's not enough for us to say, it's a lot of work to do. I mean, I recognize the administrative burden that it would take to go through and actually verify supervisors meet the qualifications to be a supervisor. And it's also the right thing to do,
Mhm.
both from a consumer protection standpoint, more so than that, and then also to assure that the registration, the associates are
Mhm.
receiving a proper supervision at minimum.
Yeah.
Steve, are we filing complaints on supervisors who are not meeting the audit?
I don't know if I can really, I mean,
It's unethical conduct.
yeah.
So we
I mean,
should
that
be
would be,
filing-
yeah, we would.
Yeah, I mean,
file a
I
complaint.
would expect that we'd be filing complaints on them.
And we have,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And I'm with Nick. I think if someone is holding themselves out as a supervisor and they're putting an associate's training at risk,
Oh, yeah.
that's, I mean, yeah.
No, and that is my, I mean, that's, well, I mean, beyond that, that is a big concern, but like, I mean, basically, I echo your concerns too. I mean, it is for both of the, not just the supervisee, but also the intent of making sure that they are proper supervisors. I mean,
And I would hope that if there are any professional organizations online right now that they're listening to this and,
Oh, yeah.
and let them know more audits are coming.
Mm.
So
So I'm wondering if there's anything that we give for our associates to just like guidelines to let them know, hey, these are the prerequisites for supervisors to have and maybe double check themselves.
so in the supervisor agreements that they do, I mean, that's kind of one of the key things there. If you look at the supervisor agreements, it lists exactly everything that they're supposed to follow that's in law, especially, the actual requirements to be a supervisor. And they have to make sure that they go through that and understand that. It's really asking those questions and not going on blind faith with your supervisor, that they've been licensed for 2 years or they've taken the actual coursework. So we do have that out there. And we've always encouraged, in our presentations that we do to registrants or new people that are thinking about applying, is one of the key things we mention is you need to make sure that your supervisor, has the requirements to be a supervisor, because this can put you in jeopardy. So that's one thing we always echo as a point, but as we see, there still needs to be improvement.
Yep. And then we have John.
Yeah, Margo.
Yeah,
sorry.
and maybe even just, it may be a little bit extra, but I mean, it might ensure that they see the documentation before verify it themselves, right?
Mhm. Exactly.
John.
So one of the things, and I think we're having a little bit of a psychic moment here across the board, is putting the burden on the associates and interns and registrants is actually, I think, a miss on our part. Because ultimately what's happening systemically right now, and I think just getting into the real weeds of the licensing process, is people are desperate to get supervision wherever they can because it's required for them to get their hours. People are desperate. There aren't enough supervisors for the people. We know that. But in this desperation, people don't have the bandwidth and they can't say, oh, I just discovered you're not 100%, but I need to have this. But then the unfortunate loophole in all of this is when they then get to when they put their application in, if that supervisor isn't qualified, they're the ones who suffer because those hours don't count. And I think that's on us, that we need to find a way to close that loophole and to really address this supervision piece. Because once again, people are desperate to find supervisors. And yes, you want to ask them to double check and do paperwork. That's wonderful. But they're like, I found somebody. That's all. That's what's really happening out there in the process. So I just think we need to be aware of that. And maybe the burden lands on us and not on the people in the process.
Plus the other thing is there's that power differential too, so.
yeah.
Yep. I was going to say that too, that hard to go to somebody who is over you and ask them to prove to you that they're a qualified supervisor. That's hard. I have a question though. When they fail the audit, are they given a time to sort of fix that? And so do they have a response time to fix that?
Yes.
Okay.
To fix it or appeal in that process. It's the cite and fine process.
Okay. And then kind of on the questions that folks were asking about sort of the licensees kind of taking the brunt of that and if the supervisor is found not to be qualified. So if they're earning hours at a time when the supervisor is self-certified, so prior to the audit, before we find that they've failed, if we've allowed this self-certification process and we haven't identified deficiencies with that supervisor, why wouldn't those hours count? I mean, the associate was acting in good faith. So seems like those hours should count up until the time the supervisor was found not to be compliant. I would think, is that how it works now?
Well, legally it wouldn't count because the supervisor has to have those requirements. We look at those at a case-by-case basis. We try not to penalize the supervisee for those hours.
Yeah, let's look. I'd like to look at that because it seems like if the associate is acting in good faith, they've checked,
Done the agreement.
recognizing the power differential that it's hard to ask your boss for document, that we should honor that good faith effort on their part until we identify a problem with that supervisor and take them out of that
Okay.
cycle.
Yeah.
If there's a way to look at that.
we can definitely look at that to see.
I would agree with Wendy. That seems like a reasonable reliance argument. They were acting in good faith. On their part. I think the supervisor should certainly get a petition filed. And that's a full complaint because they were supervising improperly. That seems to me a very easy citation to file, a very easily provable citation. So, because we can't simply have people out there they're not complying with our own regulatory provisions. So it's not really a matter of citation and then come up into compliance. If they're actually actively doing something with that supervision, then that's from my perspective really, really bad. So
Susan.
I'm just curious, Steve, if we have contacted, is it me? Anyway, if we have contacted all people who've retired, anybody who could serve as a supervisor, and what incentive we could offer them, like a limited number of hours or something like that.
We'll be talking about one of those initiatives coming up on subject 2425, talking about offering supervisors continuing education credit for supervising is one of the things we're looking at. So,
But these are not retired people.
correct. They're not retired people, but
And one of the challenges of that requirement for supervision is to be an active therapist for 2 years before, with a minimum of five clients.
Yeah, 2 out of the last 5.
So you have to be an actual active therapist to supervise. And part of the reason behind that is to stay current in the field, to stay current in philosophies of how we work with clients. So a retired person who hasn't been seeing clients actively falls out of that requirement loop.
Right. Yeah. And then we have
If they've
Justin.
just retired, I mean, like, let's say within the last year or two, then.
If we get the 2-year mark.
Right, thank you, Justin.
Steve, in these failed audits, what are they failing for? Because here it just says CEs. Is it all of them failed for CEs, or are there different reasons?
I believe it's I would have to look, but I think it's mostly the CE, but also it's either the CE or the time frame.
And so when we're asking supervisees to ask for documents, are we expecting supervisees to go to their supervisor and say, print out every CE you've taken that proves that you're a supervisor?
No. Honestly, that would put the burden of proof, but no. What they're looking at is the agreement that the supervisors are self-attesting on that form that they're looking over, that they have met those requirements, the CE. And what?
So, yeah, so I just want to echo what's already been said. Like, we are asking them,
No, I know what you mean, yeah.
supervisees to say, are you a supervisor? You have this person that you work with, you respect, there's a power differential. And if they sign something saying, yes, I self-attest I'm a supervisor, and it turns out that they're mistaken, to be gracious or just wrong, and then we penalize the person who is already most at risk. It's a system that doesn't really make sense.
In addition to that, you have that 60-day window, so somebody can self-attest and not complete the required courses and then not be, so there's just so many areas where we are putting so much responsibility on somebody that's already significantly disempowered, right? And I would even argue, in some cases, supervisors that are in exploitative positions, right, which we know is happening in some areas, not the majority, but I think there are some that just put somebody who's already so vulnerable in a position where John kind of already raised, they're so desperate to get these hours. And I think we have a responsibility to really look at that and evaluate that.
Sounds like something we need to bring to the policy and advocacy group. I think definitely.
So the last thing I want to say is I want to follow up on Susan's comment. And this is more to address what is essentially a shortage of supervisors. In the state bar, we have something called emeritus attorneys. And those are therapists, well, not therapists, but they're attorneys who are retired, they're senior, they've gone through their licensure process, and they exist to train, mentor, and provide pro bono legal services to clients to fill kind of bridges and gaps. Many of them are former professors, and so their fees are waived. We give them a license. They say your sole purpose is to do mentorship, pro bono service. They're emeritus, meaning honored. They're senior kind of masterful attorneys or master therapists. We could, it's just an idea to consider, but we have no shortage of great therapists and great clinicians in our state.
Okay, Justin.
Hey, I just want to note before we move on, there are multiple problems that we're identifying. And when we say this sounds like a job for policy and advocacy committee, I worry a little that we're just kicking the can down like, well, the next person will deal with it. We've identified some problems already, both in how we have constructed the expectations, but also we've identified problems with how the BBS would enforce these. That's not a policy and advocacy problem, right? That's a BBS staff decision of who they are selectively enforcing these things, selectively enforcing these regulations against. And so I would really like to see not just some of these structural issues be addressed in what our expectations are, but I would also like to see some clear changes or at least a clear stance from the board of that they are not going to be punishing these licensees for mistakes, ranging from mistakes to just bad faith exploitative supervisors.
But I'm appreciating all the arguments, and I fully, what better term, accept them. But it has to be that discussion in the board. So we can definitely, what I think is the process here is bringing to, whether it's policy or advocacy or the board itself, a full report kind of laying out what we're looking at right now with the laws and what has to be complied with, what we're seeing, and then working on and describing a process and what we're, how to address that, because it really has to be the board and the staff definitely have the ideas to present to the board to say, here's what we're looking at, let's figure it out. Is it going to require, it could require legislation or regulation to tighten that up or not. And we can give that explanation to the board so then we can have these larger conversations, more focused, so we can really look at this, if that makes sense. It's not pushing it down the line. It's doing the formal process of looking at this. Yeah.
Yes, that does make sense, and I appreciate that. It is the staff, am I understanding that correctly, that it is under the staff's purview to decide whether or not they enforce cases on a case-by-case basis?
It has to be up to, I mean, I have the final, I'm not the final decision, but whether to pursue a case or not to move it forward to a complaint status. But we look at, what the requirements are in the law, so, and enforce those regulations. So, so like if we want to look at ways to protect the associate, we're going to have to look and let's have that conversation of, here's what, you have to have the 2 years out of the last 5, you have to have 15. If you don't, then you're in violation. And then additionally, that we'll have to look at that to kind of explain to you what the process is or what we're doing with those. The next after that is to kind of look at is there something else we need to be putting into regulations legislation to protect the associates, or is that an amendment to the current requirements? And then
so if we are following, all of the procedures we have to through committee work and then the full board to make sure we are closing these loopholes or these gaps, that's board work. Until we do that, in the meantime, is the staff going to be enforcing action against these supervisees, even though the board right now is largely agreeing that that would be a problem?
So let me jump in. Right now, the law requires supervisors to meet certain requirements. And so if the supervisor is found to not meet the requirements, that's a yes, sort of a yes, no, we don't enforce that selectively. There is a clause in the law, for example, that if the supervisor is deficient, the supervisor training, that does not count against the supervisee. We don't look at that, but those kind of discretions like that one have to be built into the law. It's not a discretion of the staff to decide, well, we're not going to enforce it in this case or we're going to enforce it in that case. It's basically a checklist. This is what the law says it has to meet. If we find that they don't, then they don't meet it. If there's discretion built in, like we don't hold it against for the courses, that's actually in regulations. So that's why any changes to that policy have to go through first at a committee level and then to the board. It would be a legislation or a regulation change.
In practical terms, we look for any discretion that we have that we can use to not penalize the associate, if that,
All right, here, I'm just going to try and do this. I'm going to move that the executive officer work with counsel to research whether or not there are any discretionary provisions within the regulatory law allowing a associate that has reasonably relied upon a supervisor's deficient status to be otherwise excused and allow previous hours to be counted. It's a memo, won't do anything else.
Can you bring that back up in future agenda items? Because this was really just an update. So let's bring that back to if we can make note and then,
I was just going to ask
it's not really a
council.
motion, but I mean, that's not even a motion. It's just direction.
Direction, it's a direction.
Yeah, because this wasn't noticed.
Just direct me.
It'll just be a direction.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
we didn't notice this as an action item, so
Yeah.
I think we can only provide direction, not a vote.
Yeah, I've gone.
Work with counsel, develop a memo, evaluate for any discretionary provisions in the law that will allow you to excuse an associate that is otherwise reasonably relying upon a supervisor's deficient status. There you go.
There you go.
Susan, I think you had comment as well.
I'm just curious, Steve, if you can tell us how many cases or how many times this comes up so that we can know how big a problem it is.
Well, we have the.
How many times do we find out the supervisor is deficient and therefore the hours can't count, or what?
It's in the report. We kind of show you where we've done about 20, actually about 50 audits, and If you look at the report, we kind of lay out the numbers in there.
I think she's asking
Oh,
though,
how
have any
often does it-
associates been impacted by those?
I don't think it happens very often. So the 2-year license rule is pretty easy to verify by an online lookup. So we would verify that. The practicing 2 out of the past 5 years, they have to attest. That's a self-attestation. So if they're not self-attesting to that, then we're not going to know. So that I would say it's not a frequent issue. When, the audits shine a little bit more light on it.
Yeah. But
So if you
Thanks for
find
clarifying.
that something is a real problem, can't Roseanne immediately go to somebody and get some kind of a law passed quickly to rectify it? Because I mean, the governor is very, very interested in having more therapists out there. He is really into mental health.
Yeah, Roseanne, I'll let you handle
Or,
that,
well,
but the
legal counsel.
legislative process is pretty set.
Yeah, the legislative process is pretty set. This has not come across at least my desk as a common issue. I get some questions about the coursework, which there's discretion in the law for that. But if we were to make a change, it has to go through the regular legislative or regulatory process, which at minimum, once the bill starts running, is about a year. The legislature, it's very rare that they hustle something through. And even when we've hustled something with the supervision via video conferencing was a urgency measure that got approved in August instead of September. So they don't really move quickly, and that's by design because they want the process to be thoughtful.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Justin, oh, you look like you wanted to say
Yeah, no,
something. You're holding it in this time?
No, thank you for the explanation, Steve.
Thanks. Any comments from in-house participants? Okay, moderator, any comments online?
All right, WebEx, for those of you who don't already have your hands up, now is the time to tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. And first, we're going to call on Carolyn Cummings. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello. Thank you for taking my question. I have been licensed as an MFT since 2012, and lucky me, I have never been audited. However, when I'm working with students and also in associates, that is a little bit of a disadvantage because I can't tell them the pragmatics of what happens if they were to get the audit letter. And so my basic understanding of this is that they will receive a hard copy letter in the mail, and then they need to provide records of their CEs back to the board once they're licensed, of course, but that's something I haven't been able to walk anyone through. And so I'm just wondering, from a pragmatic standpoint, what kind of communication does the board want to see about those CEs? Is that in PDFs? Is that in print ups? Like, what's the best way for people to get that information back to you all if they get audited?
Currently, we accept the PDFs is the normal procedure, so we can actually see the actual certificates.
The letter would have, the letter would come out as a hard copy in the mail, and it would have all of the instructions on how to comply in it.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Lisa Wininger. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone. Dr. Wininger, are you with us? All right, I see your microphone lighting up, but we didn't hear any sound.
Am I with you yet? Hello?
Yes, there you are. Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
please.
Tech issues. Okay. Dr. Lisa Wininger, so grateful for the conversation focusing on protecting associates. And a couple comments. One, separate conversation, I realize, but there are so many obstacles to building the supervisor supply. And I know this is a separate part of agendas or committees, First of all, the W-2 requirement for the supervisee to be employed at a practice is an obstacle. I think it's a good one, but it creates limitations. And also a supervisee needs to find clients. I'm sorry, a supervisor needs to find clients, and the appropriate clients for a supervised E are not necessarily what the supervisor had been working with for themselves. So there's some just like systemic obstacles there. And I really want to highlight that supervision is a different skill set than therapy. It is a different skill set. Separately, though, going back to enforcement, a couple comments on enforcement. One is when I look up a enforcement action in the DCA therapist directory website thing of licensing, the way that an impacted licensee is shown, in other words, surrendered or revoked license, is really no different visually from any other license. And in fact, the first thing you see is the license type, which implies that they're licensed. I frequently look through the different reports of, I'm running out of time. I'm switching. I'm sorry. No, I'll finish this comment. I frequently look through the reports of enforcement actions, and I then Google the person, and it seems that they're still practicing. And I realize there's a scope that you're not able to enforce that they actually stop. I think I don't know where your jurisdiction ends, but they still have websites up, and it seems that they're still soliciting clients. And then when you look on DCA, it might have the text surrendered, but I'm wondering if you can change the way that, like, put a red mark or say no longer allowed to practice on the actual DCA directory when there's been an impacted license action. I have other things, but I'll go separate.
Thank you. And those are all of our online requests.
Thank you. We don't have an action item on this. It's about time for a quick break, so we'll take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 10:10. We are back in session. Welcome back. We will be going to item 17. It's outreach and education update. And Steve, we're back with you.
Yes, thank you. So just to give you a recap on what we've done in the last quarter, we had 7 presentations. We're trying to put in there stats to show this year over last year so we can keep track on that, because we can see if we're meeting the goals of the Outreach and Education Committee and what we've set forward. So you'll start seeing more statistics on that. And there were 2 conferences that were attended. Some of the key ones to recognize is we did the CAMP Pre-Licensed Summit, and that was in December. And that was a virtual participation, and we talk about any questions, answer questions they have about employment, supervision, and work settings. And additionally, we went to the NASW, National Association of Social Workers, California Social Work Conference, and that's an in-person attendance. Both of those conferences are kind of standard events we go to, and they're always a great way to connect with either applicants or people that are current licensees or registrants. So we appreciate the offers of invitation to those. So CAMP and NASW, keep them coming, please. We also renewed communications with UC Berkeley and CSU San Bernardino, and we have events planned for them. For National Association of Social Work California, we are working with them to present lunch hour presentations in 2026, and I think it's about 3 presentations we give on various aspects of applying for licensure, registration, and I believe, I'm not sure, last year we were looking at one doing telehealth, and sometimes we include law and ethics, kind of overview of our enforcement process. So we had some recent publication updates. We published a new update on the 90-day rule. Don't lose your hours, know your 90-day rule. And then we've updated the FAQs for the MFT trainees, including updates to talk about practicum course requirements. And we published our fall newsletter just recently, and you can see some of the topics included in there in the actual report. Our social media engagement, Facebook, we had approximately 38 38,000 followers, and for Instagram, about 21,000 followers. We're working on to try to present year-over-year data on that. It's hard to go back historically to collect that data, so now that we're tracking it, we should be able to present kind of more year-over-year data on that. And we will be, as I said before on the outreach, we are looking at various ways to increase engagement on social media and offer more information out there. And that's it for the report. Short report, sorry.
Any questions from board members? Dr. Walker?
Yes, thank you, Chair Stroud. Just really quickly, given this outstanding presentation that we had earlier on updates on the registration and licensing unit, and she mentioned a couple of events that are coming up in April for them. Refresh my memory because I'm not looking at the report. Are we bringing those events forward or including them in your update?
We will be historically, yeah, when we do
So that's
that.
coming soon? Or is it in this report?
It's
You
not
said
in
May?
this report, but we will next May, in May, you'll see
Great.
all the stuff that we've done.
Okay.
Yeah, so
All right,
it's kind
thank
of the
you.
historical perspective of what we've done.
Any other questions? Okay, any in-house audience member questions?
Hello, Bindu Mukamala, Policy Manager with the NASW California chapter. I just want to convey our thank you and appreciation for BBS presence at our annual conference last year in Irvine and for the continuing BBS Lunch and Learn events. And also, we are very excited to host our Lobby Days event, April 12th and 13th in Sacramento, and we hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment online. Seeing no requests, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. We'll move on to item 18, the administration update. Steve.
Yes, first thing we have on there is talking about the registration applications online and the what we call is the Work Authorization 165. I think I may have explained it before, but while we are looking at the final process of putting the registration, AMFT registrations online, we're also doing some work on the actual kind of configuration of the system itself too, to make it more usable in the back end and to help us track the applications better and to process things better. So the final phase of that right now for the AMFT registration is we are finishing up what is called the data verification, making sure that when we make the change, all the records that we currently have are not going to be messed up, for a better term and purpose. So we're close to that. And I believe this year we will definitely have that in place. And then after that, we will be looking at the ASW registration applications and the APCC registration applications. It should be a quicker process since we have the structure in place, which mirrors the AMFT registration. So should be a quicker process to get those online. The next step for that, though, you'll be seeing this kind of in the strategic plan, probably as a task item, looking at the applications for licensure to go online. And yes, you have a question? Or?
No.
Okay.
Do you want to continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in looking at the calls handled, we had the CIC, the Communication Information Center, handled approximately 3,000 calls for us, and that was down 3.85% from last year. Renewal applications, we had approximately 29,000 renewal applications, which was up 1.8% from last year. And then other administration applications, those are duplicate search, change of address, and certification letters. And the total number of applications was slightly down from last year. What we're trying to track on there and to give better data on is to see the year over year on the usage of online applications. One of the initiatives we're doing is we currently have applications online, paper forms that you can download and submit. We are looking at modifying that and trying to encourage people to use the online forms. So, because it does help with staff time and resources and will help out cashiering. And email volumes decreased for the administration unit about 8.65% since last year, but they fielded about 4,700 emails. And that's kind of the BBS general information emails is really primarily most of that. So people asking questions that don't necessarily fit within a license question or registration or kind of application questions. So those are more general questions that are answered. Is there any questions?
Any board member questions? Just wanted to know, exciting that we're getting somewhere with the online applications. So good to see that. So any in-house comments? Oh, sorry, one board member comment.
Steve, in this, sorry, when this report was prepared, it used to, under the calls handled, include times, as in how long someone was on that call, how quickly it was responded to. Could you add that back in again? Because that is an important thing for both consumers and our licensees and registrants to keep on track and make sure those responses are done in a timely and quick manner.
I will add that back in.
Thank you. And on to our in-house comments.
Thank you. Ben Caldwell, MFT. Just a quick question, Steve. It's great to hear about the work being done on the online AMFT application. Do you have even a ballpark estimate for a go live date?
A ballpark estimate, I'm hoping, my personal self, I'm hoping by June, maybe earlier though.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Moderator, are there any online comments?
WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand if you haven't done so already. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no online requests, do you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 19, Workforce Development Committee update. Steve.
Yes, so the Workforce Development Committee is really busy, primarily looking at the LMFT education requirements. Roseanne presented kind of the seven-step process that we're looking at. We're reviewing the LMFT licensure requirements. Step number 1 would be qualifying. We're looking at the qualifying degree accreditation, core content, and practicum requirements. Then we'll be looking at graduate level course content that might be allowable for remediation. And step 3 would be looking at supplemental coursework requirements. Step 4 would be looking at the national attainability and unintended consequences that the changes may have for a national, like for portability and such for our licensees. Then we'll be looking and having a discussion on the pre-degree hours. And the other thing looking at is, I don't know how to term it, like a provisional associate registration. We had that discussion about trainee.
It's then basically, is there a way to formalize and give the 90-day rule people some sort of a preliminary number?
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. And the last one we're looking at is looking at a formal school approval process, since now we don't really approve not course content, but we don't approve schools, or we don't necessarily approve the actual degree programs, but looking at somehow where we can identify those programs or schools as having those education requirements that would lead to licensure, to kind of make it easier for associates and applicants to understand, if their school they're going to is going to lead to licensure. So that's kind of the very last process. The other thing we talked about, we did a presentation on the Healthcare Access and Information's 2025 annual report to kind of show you the data for the board and what the data that was for our registrants and licensees, and that gives you some of that, basically the demographic data of our pool of licensees and registrants. So I would say pretty interesting, some of the data. So I would recommend, if you want to see that, please go to the workforce reports and check that out. And then we did kind of a summary on a report that the American Associations of Marriage and Family Therapists, they did a report called A Systemic Workforce for a Complex World. And this surveyed about 2,000 licensed MFTs, pre-licensees, and graduate students, and kind of to see what the workforce is, how they are operating in the workforce. One of the interesting things I took away from that was the use of AI, and they had some data in there. The report definitely was only 2,000 people responded to the survey, but it kind of gives you something to focus on, to kind of see. So it was just kind of an update, not an update, but just kind of a presentation so that the committee can kind of look at that when we move forward with our discussions. The last thing we did was looked at the workforce plan and just gave a status update on that. Any questions?
Okay, board member questions? You
Can I make a
go ahead,
comment?
Eleanor?
Can I make a comment?
Of course.
Okay, so in regards to the plans that we have for possible changes that are in the pike for our students being able to maybe start accruing hours earlier, I would suggest, even though I think you mentioned one of the last things is having working with the schools to kind of help that put into place. So I would suggest kind of letting them know now, because all that takes a long process to get programs changed and processes, and then even if they're going to be paired off with field instructors that are licensed. So that's something that really needs to be kind of working hand in hand, because it can take years, some of them.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of the schools are in the process of making a one-year accreditation, one-year program. So that's actually starting this, for a lot of them this next year. But my encouragement is just to, keep in contact with people, and so that they know what's coming and what they need to do to prepare.
Yeah, and just hopefully anybody watching, we definitely encourage any the education institutions and such to please join these conversations so that we can hear, how these changes might affect, or what that's going to help us into crafting something that doesn't have unintended consequences on that. So.
And
So maybe as a board, we can send something out, just maybe inviting the schools to let them know we're having this conversation so that they can be aware and even designate someone. So.
yes, we've been also in all of our MFT consortium quarterly presentations, we've been talking about the project and heavily encouraging educators to attend, and let any of their educator friends that might be interested, encourage them to attend as well.
Okay, thanks. Any other board comments? Any in-house comments? Moderator, do we have any online comments on this item?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise a hand. You can do so by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no requests, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 20, the Outreach and Education Committee update. And Steve, we're back to you.
Me again. I was getting sick of listening, yeah. So at the Outreach and Education Committee, the first thing we talked about, we reported on the recent outreach activities and gave an overview of that. And one of the things we did report on was the first virtual listening session we had for the artificial intelligence in mental health practice. It attracted over 450 participants. We were basically using that to kind of see how we can perfect the system and doing those online live events, and which includes looking at ways to get more data on who's attending these events, and then also for follow-up communication for people that do attend the events to see if how they liked the event or not, or any suggestions for future live events. So we're trying to look at better ways to not streamline, but improve those outreach events and schedule more. The next big topic we had on the agenda was we provided an update on the current social media use and efforts to expand our digital engagement. And we were looking at various platforms to possibly utilize, including TikTok, Instagram, SMS messaging, and using pre-recorded Facebook videos. I think what we're really looking at now from that is doing a deeper dive into maybe using Instagram Reels, and the SMS messaging is something that we're also looking at. So right now we use a listserv and emails to get out information, looking at it, seeing if we can actually get that information straight to somebody's phone, so that they can get an actual text message to warn them of an upcoming meeting and such. So we are looking at that. What the next steps for that social media and the work on that is, we will be talking with the department to see what is feasible for us to use, making sure we are following all the proper protocols, and then possibly, if we need to, looking at not procuring, but signing up for any sort of applications we need or services. So it looks promising. We reviewed the newsletter, and we're asking for, kind of like any suggestions that the committee may have on topics for the newsletter. And additionally, on the newsletter is still continuing to look at a better way to present that to the public through the current system. We email it, but looking at making it more user-friendly, even if it's through email, redesigning it somehow so it's more easily accessible. And then that was the committee. So that was it.
Thank you. Any board comments or questions? Dr. Walker?
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to maybe just remind our viewers and supporters and stakeholders that the O&E Committee, Outreach and Education Committee Subcommittee is new. So we're just a few meetings in, and at this point, I'm the chair of this subcommittee, and we're laying the foundation intentionally. And sometimes that coin less is more is kind of where we're at. But I also want to underscore that Steve's update, the first item was a high stakes update where he is looking at bringing to us what is happening in-house with outreach and education and those events and how they align with our strategic plan. When we look at moving forward, our goals and our benchmarks, and those milestones that will follow them, we're not messing around with this. This is something that's very important to us. And so as we continue to move forward, I just want you to please support us and know that we're working very hard to encourage collaboration with our consumers, with our stakeholders, with schools, and we're getting a lot of feedback. We're getting a lot of, as you've heard earlier from some of our supporters online, which we do appreciate, Dr. Lisa Granger and Dr. Carolyn Hamming, for your being with us today and sharing your comments about O&E, outreach and education, and how this reach from the board is extending into the community. So Steve, I want to thank you for this update today. And I'm also just being proactive in looking at outreach and education update and your outreach and education committee update. So we don't want to be redundant here. So let's just kind of keep that in mind as we move forward. It may be something that we may want to consider collapsing or go ahead. Thank you.
We are thinking the same way. As
Okay.
I put that on the agenda, it's like, no, this needs to be.
Okay.
So
thank you.
yes, I mean, and that kind of with the agenda, it kind of follows. Yes, you have that committee. We're reporting on that, and that will be included. Like, yeah. So I think next time you'll see it combined.
Okay, I appreciate that. And lastly, I just feel like it would be remiss if I didn't say that working in the subcommittee gives board members an opportunity to work up close and personal with staff. Just like we saw today, it's just so valuable to hear directly from them when they're giving their presentations on social media and things like that. It's just like mind blowing. It's extraordinary to really understand what it looks like from their lens and being in the trenches and doing the work versus, you know, kind of being on the outside looking in. So I really appreciate the opportunity to chair this committee, to be on the workforce subcommittee, and just have that opportunity to work closely with our valued staff here and our EO. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Okay, any in-house comments? Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, now's the time to raise a hand for agenda item 20. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 21. We have the Department of Consumer Affairs update. Welcome.
All right, good morning, board members and staff. My name is Lucia Saldivar, and I'm the Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations at the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with some updates from the department. Firstly, we are excited to share that Chief Deputy Director Christine Lawley has been named the Acting Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs. She enters this role following the retirement of DCA Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer. Director Lawley brings extensive experience to the position, having served in multiple leadership roles within the department since 2013. She will lead DCA in this position until a director is formally appointed by the governor's office. Next, last year, Governor Newsom took action to assist licensees affected by the Los Angeles fires and swiftly issued an executive order to allow a one-year postponement of license renewal fees that were due for renewal between January and June 2025 for survivors that were impacted by the fires. Last month, DCA began sending notices to licensees who chose this postponement option with a reminder about the one-year postponement and renewal fee due dates. Licensees with license types in the BREEZE system can pay these renewal fees through their online account. Those with license types not in the BREEZE system may submit their payments via mail. In 2025, Governor Newsom released his proposed 2025-26 state budget, which included a proposal to split DCA's oversight agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, into two new state agencies. The first being the California Housing and Homelessness Agency, and the next being the Business and Consumer Services Agency. After public hearings and review by the Little Hoover Commission and the legislature, the governor's reorganization plan was enacted on July 5th, 2025. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs, which will be among one of the 8 departments in this new agency. The two new agencies will officially become operative on July 1st, 2026. DCA continues to participate in multiple agency work groups on the logistics required to transition the new agency and will continue to keep board and bureau leadership apprised throughout the months ahead. Additionally, to best serve the public, it is incumbent upon all of us to ensure that we are being fiscally prudent in our decisions, especially when traveling for board business. DCA would like to remind members and staff to evaluate if a rental car is always necessary versus ride-sharing services. Carpooling is also highly encouraged when renting vehicles. And we know that there might be some new travel costs that board members are experiencing, such as baggage charges, so please keep receipts to ensure that you can be reimbursed. DCA also wanted to provide a reminder about Form 700 Statement of Economic Interest filing. These forms must be filed within 30 days of assuming or leaving your appointment and annually by April 1st. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year, which is January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. And the deadline for filing is Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. To ensure compliance, DCA requests that Form 700 filers complete the e-filing by Friday, March 20th, 2026. DCA board members must file Form 700s through the FPPC's online portal. Paper filings will not be accepted. You should have already received an email from the FPPC with instructions on how to file your annual Form 700, but if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact Board and Bureau Relations at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. And some other training updates for board members. Firstly, the DCA's training unit has developed an unconscious bias training that's specifically for board members. This training will be added to board members' LMS accounts, and it's going to be incorporated into the onboarding process for all newly appointed board members. DCA's annual President's Training will also be taking place next week on February 24th, 2026 from 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And this virtual training is for board presidents and vice presidents. It serves as a forum to share best practices for presiding over the board. Please register online using DCA's Learning Management System, also known as LMS. And also, board member orientation training, also known as BMONT, is an all-day virtual training that DCA will offer on April 1st, June 24th, and October 21st of this year. This training must be completed by board members within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to the board. Please register for the first available date to be in compliance. And you can register for BMONT using DCA's LMS system. But if you have any questions or need assistance accessing these trainings, please contact us at memberrelations@dca.ca.gov. And to close, I want to thank all of you for your dedicated service to protect California's consumers. I appreciate your time, and at this time, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for being here. Board members, do we have any questions? Dr. Walker?
Thank you. Just one follow-up. For the board member training, like, is it BMOT? Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
We can also go in-house with Christina as well to see if we're in compliance or not with that, or should we come directly to you?
Please reach out to us directly. Okay. Yeah, we'll make sure to check whether you're in compliance or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do we have any questions from our in-house participants? Moderator, do we have any questions or comments online?
All right, WebEx, now's the time to raise a hand for the DCA update. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the agenda?
Yes, thank you. Thanks
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to item 22, update on the Association of Marital and Family Therapy Boards Marital and Family Therapy National Examination. Steve.
That is a mouthful. So what I'm presenting here is kind of an update of where we're at with the possible transition to the AMFTRB national exam. Thank you for describing the acronym already for me. So I appreciate it. Really, the big news is on the regulation process. So we are in the what's called the production phase, getting all the paper, getting everything ready to be approved, to pass up for approval from DCA and agency and all the necessary approvals. But during the drafting of those regulations, legal counsel did bring up a good point that we haven't done a recent study on the actual what we call linkage study with on the AMFTRB. The last study that we did was in 2022. And that's what kind of was the impetus of starting the conversation about the AMFTRB exam. Since then, they have gone through an occupational analysis and have created a new content and task items in the exam. And so that was starting in January 1st, 2026. So the thought was, and it's a very valid thought, and I thought it was a great thought. We actually asked OPS to look at the AMFTRB exam again with the new content that it has currently. So in December, we had asked OPS to do a linkage study, and I kind of explain it there, but linkage study is saying California has this content, AMFT has this content, do they link up? Does it actually test the same things, and to what, how they test each? Is it going to satisfy our testing requirements? We were hoping to bring it to this today, but the time frame, as going through the process, there's a lot of questions that still are kind of unanswered, and so to give it the time it needs, we are going to bring it to the May meeting so that we can have discussions. OPS can have better discussions with AMFTRB and to kind of define those linkages. So you'll be seeing that in May. We'll be talking about that. That being said, with the regulation process and the timing, we are most likely looking at a delay of this implementation of the AMFTRB exam. Looking at it, I think, honestly, it would probably be a possible July 2027 date. So, which is, will allow us actually more time to have more discussion on the exam, because I know there are still kind of some unanswered questions that some of the board members have, and that we need to kind of make sure that you're all you're feeling good about this move. So, albeit it's extending it, I think it's going to offer us to have those better conversations. In the meantime, kind of the rest of what we're doing there's 4 kind of key areas we were looking at on how do we transition over to the exam. And so the first one was the regulatory. The next ones I'm going to kind of update you on are the system development. Administratively, what do we need in computer system to be able to make sure that eligibilities are transferred and scores are transferred back. Talking about outreach, and then the actual, how does that transition look like for a candidate? So we have been in discussions, and we keep having discussions with AMFTRB to kind of answer some of our administrative questions and to talk about what they're working on to move forward. So as we move the next conversations in May and in August, when we have these board meetings, we'll provide more information as to what's kind of being done and what the thought process is and what AMFTRB is kind of working on to make that transition easier, and then also what they might be looking at to ensure that everyone's satisfied that it would be that we're okay with transitioning over to AMFTRB. So I'm hopefully going to be able to facilitate a little more better conversations at the next few board meetings. That being said, the first thing, system readiness, we've already kind of contacted OIS. We've submitted a ticket, had initial conversations about what we need to do and develop in the background for a system to be able to transfer all our information, testing eligibility information to AMFTRB. It doesn't look like it's going to be that too hard of a project, so that's good. But that ball is rolling. The other thing too is we're really, outreach. If we're going into making this transition, outreach is a huge thing to make sure everyone understands, the exam, what the exam means for them and what the exam entails, making sure that everyone's informed about where they are in the process and how that affects them. CAMP has done a really good job of partnering with us and kind of looking at some questions, and they actually did put out an FAQ kind of preliminary, and it explains somewhat of what the change might mean for candidates. So they're already jumping on that already. So thank you, CAMP, for working on that. But they also are really offering their services to support us in, when we're ready to move forward with that outreach effort. So really appreciate that. Additionally, we already are looking at kind of outreach documents and FAQs and looking at producing that information so that when the appropriate time comes, we can start publishing all that material and looking to see what other kind of outreach efforts that we can put in place. So we're getting that planned already. The one thing that was one of the big concerns was the accessibility. This is going to double the amount of exams that AMFTRB delivers. And so the concern is that with this big population of California coming, is there going to be accessibility since they only currently offer the exam once 1 week per year, 1 week per month. They are already looking at extending that 2 weeks at least, maybe even 3 weeks. So we are in that conversations to kind of see what they're able to do on that. And some of the kind of the restrictions they have on opening up is currently the way they develop the exam. You have to develop various forms of it. You could probably explain it. You have to have all the exam forms developed so that you can do a continual basis. The way they operate too is a little bit differently. We kind of we do pre-test questions, and so we're already evaluating for the next exam. We're evaluating these questions. Their process is you take the exam, then they analyze all the data. They analyze and do the analysis of the pass rates and stuff to make sure that the exam performed whatever standards they had set to perform before issuing the exam score and saying that you can move forward. So the way we operate, like I said, we do pre-test questions so we can kind of continually offer the exam you can schedule whenever. So they are looking at ways to maybe change that, but I can't. As we move forward, we'll get more information to you as to what they're looking at and what we are looking at. Might be closed session because some of the stuff might not be able to publicly promote it, but yeah, we're trying to provide you with more information on that. The last thing I put in there was just, I know the concern, I wanted to get that out early, is the big concern is what happens when day one we go forward and what happens to the candidates that are currently in the system, and then are you going to have to take the California exam, or are you going to have to take the national exam? So really what I've provided there is kind of what we're looking at for the process and what we would put in place to mitigate kind of mitigate any effect that might have on the actual testing candidate. And originally, we've done it before for social work where we've put a stop date to the exams, the California exams, and it was a dead period where nobody could take an exam. But we think we will be able to allow people to take the exam, California exam, up to the last date, and then transfer the eligibilities and move over. One of the things that we will do for that, just to mitigate, to make sure there's no people that have examination eligibilities that expire right up to that date or close to that date, we want to make sure they have time to actually schedule their exam and take their exam. So we'll look at those and extend eligibility dates. We're looking at a 3-month period now for certain people. And then what we'll do is if we see that there's still issues that are occurring out there with people scheduling and being able to take the exam, we'll reassess and then see if we need to extend those periods a little bit further to make sure that nobody's negatively affected by that. Because the main point is, the main concern is that these eligibility expiration dates. We don't want anybody to have to struggle to be able to take their exam, and we want to make sure they have the time to. So that's kind of, it's really early to bring this component in, but I just wanted to put it out there because I know that's a big concern for people that are currently in the process. So just so they know that that's what we're kind of looking at for the actual, if we go live with this, that would be kind of what we're looking at for the process. Like I said, it's just an update. We will be having more conversations on this. Definitely we'll bring that linkage study back once OPS has that completed, and that will be, yeah, we'll keep the conversation moving forward.
Great, thank you. Board members, do we have any questions? All right. Do we have any in-house audience members with questions?
Thank you, Ben Caldwell, MFT, and thank you for that update, Steve. In particular, I appreciate that the board is taking a thoughtful approach to the people who are going to be in the exam process when the transition actually happens, whenever that winds up being. Obviously, want to minimize any negative impact on individual folks working their way toward licensure. As I've mentioned in these meetings in the past, there are some concerns about measurement and abiding by testing industry standards. These are not unique to AMFTRB. These are consistent concerns across clinical exams and mental health licensure. But I know that the board is going to be discussing some of these issues with AMFTRB as part of the process. And I was just curious, to the degree that you can disclose in open session, have those been productive conversations? Is AMFTRB showing some willingness to make movement in positive directions in terms of following those industry standards for testing?
I can't particularly speak to that per se, but with that, definitely the conversations have been very, they're willing to work, work to see what they can do. I don't know, that's pretty generic, but yeah, we haven't really spoke about those conversations yet. I think when the linkage study comes out, those probably will be more, those conversations will be more poignant when we talk to them about that with the linkage study coming out. But they are, with everything else, they're more willing to look at how they can accommodate. I don't want to say accommodate, but how they can work towards gaining our trust, I guess is a way to put it, I guess.
Thank you. And then in terms of process, you're saying that they're looking at extending the testing window. Does that mean that folks who go through testing would still need to, as they do now with the National MFT exam, wait up to 30 days to receive their test results because of all that sort of post-test analysis that happens?
They would have to, yeah, that process is going to still be in place because they would still go through the process of doing, the actual testing validation after the exam period. So I think it's 12, I think 8, I don't know if it's 30 days.
Yeah, it may not be that long, but
it's
I just know there's a
that,
period of time.
There will be a
waiting.
There will be a wait.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to raise your hand. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3. And our first online request is coming from Shanti Ezrin. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning. My name is Shanti Ezrin with CAMPT. Thank you so much, Steve, for this update today. It's really important that any concerns that can be addressed early are addressed. So thank you for all the transparency with the linkage study and letting us know about the possible delay in implementation. And in the meantime, we know board and staff are doing a lot of work in each of the 4 different focus areas and work streams. So thank you again for keeping the foot on the gas in those different areas, even with a bit of a delay in implementation. We also really appreciate staff's assistance in reviewing our FAQ, which really addresses many of the common questions that we've been receiving from our members about the transition to the national exam. Like you've mentioned, we've published the FAQ. It's now on our CAMPT website. I'm going to go ahead and just read the URL real quick. It's pretty short and simple: www.campt.org/national-exam. That's the URL where the FAQ is posted. Really hope the board will continue to use CAMP as a resource, and we also look forward to posting additional guidance documents developed by the board on our webpage and helping communicate timely information to stakeholders. Now, regarding the exam transition updates, also really appreciate and thank you for your focus and effort devoted to analyzing the eligibility data and scheduling patterns. It's really great to hear that AMFTRB is considering extending test availability from 1 week to 2 weeks per month. And we also appreciate the board's decision to extend eligibility expiration dates for those candidates whose eligibility would otherwise expire within the first 3 months following the transition
15
date.
seconds.
All that is to say, thank you so much again for the continued transparency with these updates, and please let us know how CAMP can continue to assist in communicating updates and ensuring the transition is as smooth as possible.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Kathy Atkins. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Atkins from CAMFT. I underscore and reiterate everything Shanti eloquently spoke about, and just highlighting as well for board members, BBS staff members, and any attendees of this meeting. It's incredibly important to CAMFT that our membership, MFTs, including not only future test takers, but supervisors, educators, agency directors, we really want to ensure as many people as possible are knowledgeable about this transition, as well as the different aspects of this transition. In the FAQ, Shanti talked about it. The very last question is a please tell us your questions link. Because we're doing our best with conversations with stakeholders, BBS, AMFTRB, to predict what questions will be out there, but we really, really, really want to hear from those impacted by that. So, please, your colleagues, please ask them to get in touch with CAMP, myself, Shanti, or through that link Shanti discussed. Like I said, we really want to put as much information out there as possible, so there's as little hiccups as possible. Any transition comes with bumps, and I know there will be ones with this, just because that's how things roll out, especially with technology. So the more we can do to get people ready, get people transitioned, and
15
things of that
seconds.
nature, we really want to. So again, please, please pass along the messaging. Please pass along Shanti and my email. Anything we can do to be assistance. Thank you. And thank you, BBS, for all your hard work.
Thank you. And those are all of our online requests for public comment.
Great, thank you. With that, we'll move on to item 24, discussion and possible action regarding possible statutory amendments to the required notice to consumer requirements. Roseanne.
Thanks, Wendy. So back in 2024, the board sponsored SB 1024, and that bill, which was enacted in January of 2025, updated the procedures for licensees and registrants to the board to provide their license and registration information to clients. The change was prompted basically out of the increasing use of telehealth and the finding that the wall display of a license didn't really make a lot of sense when it came to somebody practicing via telehealth. So we made some changes, and the changes required that to ensure clients had their therapist's information, that as part of the required notice to consumers, that a notice include the licensee or registrant's name, license type, license number, and expiration date when they are initiating psychotherapy services. And that was intended to ensure transparency and minimize the administrative burden on licensees as well. So now all licensees at the onset of services are required to provide that personal information. We've started hearing from a number of licensees who work with incarcerated individuals, and they've raised concern about implications for them being required to disclose their full name and license number at the beginning of treatment, just off the bat, that might pose significant safety risks to themselves and their families. So there's been a lot of concern that we've heard there, and based on that feedback, staff committed to bringing these concerns to the Policy and Advocacy Committee for discussion. In terms of some of the background research that we did while we were looking into this project, we looked at what other healing arts boards require of their licensees within DCA. So the Board of Psychology, whose licensees may also work in similar circumstances, they also have disclosure requirements. They must provide their name, license type, and the highest degree earned, either in writing at the initial office visit or prominently displayed in areas visible to patients. And this is in Business and Professions Code 680.5. And this particular section in the Business and Professions Code applies to most DCA licensees that are healing arts licensees. There are a few carve-outs. Our board is carved out, and a couple of other boards are carved out for sort of unknown reasons. It's kind of an older statute. It probably needs to be updated for telehealth, but it does not apply to our licensees. We have our own law that we've created for that. And that particular law, Business and Professions Code section 680.5, does include an exemption for certain facilities licensed under the Health and Safety Code sections 1260 and 1265. So there's a carve out that includes people working in general acute care hospitals, psychiatric hospitals, correctional treatment facilities, and nursing facilities. Those people don't have to provide that information. And also in the process of doing our additional research, we reached out to several agencies within the correctional system to gather information regarding their complaint processes. We didn't hear back from all of them, but we did hear back from the California Correctional Health Care Services, which is a big one. They oversee medical, dental, and mental health care for individuals incarcerated in all of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or CDCRs. All of those 31 institutions, and they responded with detailed feedback, which was very helpful. The CHCS confirmed that historically mental health providers in CDCR facilities typically identify themselves verbally using their last name and professional titles, for example, Mrs. Jones, LCSW. And written materials generally only include the last name and title unless otherwise required by law. This is in order to minimize risks of harassment or retaliation. They also outlined that they have policies to protect provider identity and internal procedures that allow incarcerated individuals to file complaints without needing full provider identification. These include, they have a grievance process with supervisory review mechanisms. And if a complaint is filed directly to the board, the CDCR can assist to the board in identifying the provider. Concerns regarding the disclosure of the full legal names and licensing details that the board has been hearing from providers working in these settings was echoed by CCHCS. They noted that while the providers had some tools to protect their privacy, such as using professional mailing services or institutional addresses, they don't fully address the risks posed by mandatory written disclosures. They have reviewed a text of the proposal that was presented. They reviewed the P&A proposal and then also the proposal from today, and they don't at this time have any concerns with the language that we're going to be discussing today. So in terms of P&A committee discussion, we started this discussion in October, had a meeting, did some more research, and then we considered the issue and some language at our January 15th Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting. And at that meeting, the committee directed staff to make some minor discuss changes and bring the proposed language to the board for consideration as a legislative proposal. So the language that you see today is shown in attachment A, and it uses a provision in I found in section 680 of the Business and Professions Code as a model. And that provision sets a name tag requirement for certain health professionals in certain settings. And it had a clause in there. It allows the employing entity or agency's discretion in certain settings to make an exception from requiring a person to wear a name tag. So this draft language utilizes that provision, but only in very narrow settings and if certain things are done. So the settings that I've drafted the language that this would apply to would be basically a facility licensed as an acute psychiatric hospital pursuant to Health and Safety Code Section 1250B, which talks about in certain inpatient services in those hospitals. I've included the exact provision in attachment B for you to take a look at if you'd like. A correctional treatment center license pursuant to the Health and Safety Code 1250J. And so I've also included the text of that. Those two are inpatient services only. And then to address more general places where incarcerated individuals might be obtaining services. There's some language in there that applies it to any setting where mental health services are provided to incarcerated individuals under the jurisdiction of a local, state, or federal correction authority, including state prisons, county jails, juvenile detention facilities. So the proposal in attachment A basically requires that if those specific carved out settings that can make an exception for personal safety, if they choose to do that, that they need to do certain things. They need to have an established process by which the client may request and obtain enough information to file a complaint about the licensee with the board. And they need to provide, as part of the written notice, they need to provide the client with the process to request that information, or the way to request that information in the copy of the written notice, basically in lieu of the name and information. And they have to save a copy in the client's records as proof of delivery. And then we've also, since the last meeting, to kind of beef it up even a step more, basically said when that discretion is used, the licensee or registrant is responsible for making sure that the employing entity or agency actually has has that process in place. So if they don't have that process in place, it's their responsibility to not abide by the exception. So the language in attachment A, you'll see that the very first section, all of the sections are basically the same, one for each license. The changes that I made since the Policy and Advocacy Committee in the first section, 4980.33, are shown in green, just so you can see exactly what I changed since the last meeting that was discussed by P&A. So in terms of what's next, if the board decides that it wants to approve the language today, we're already the legislative sessions are already underway. Today's the bill introduction deadline, but Senator Ochoa Bogue, who authored SB 1024 in 2024, has agreed to author the proposed language if the board would like to move forward this year. She has introduced a spot bill, SB 993, as a placeholder and is willing to run it as an urgency measure if the board would like. So with that, I will open it up for discussion.
Board member questions. Board Member Heft.
Thank you very much for your work on this. Can you clarify, if we do not accept these changes, what happens to mental health providers working in corrections and rehabilitation and acute psychiatric facilities?
If we do not accept, then the requirements stand as they are, that they have to provide their name and license number prior to every service.
And thank you. And the primary concerns that we heard are concerns about safety.
Personal safety, yes. About it, it's very easy to basically, with a first and last name as filed with the board and a license number, it's very easy for them to just go on the internet and find where they live, personal family information, stuff like that.
And our understanding is that Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and these acute psychiatric facilities communicated they have their own internal grievance process. If a client has concerns, they would bring it to some ombudsman or someone within the organization.
They have an internal grievance process. It's a very formal process. We get complaints from incarcerated individuals as well. So they file complaints with us as well. The correctional facilities have a grievance process as well.
Okay. So again, thank you for this work. I want to talk briefly about concerns about safety as an excuse to avoid transparency. Across the body of research that looks at stalking and harassment of mental health providers, about 5% of mental health providers report experiencing stalking. A majority of those, a vast majority, are psychiatrists. About a third of those stalkers are patients. So we're looking at a ballpark of about 0.1% of inpatient clients stalking mental health therapists and social workers. When you look at, again, across a wide body of data of what this looks like, there's not convincing evidence to suggest that this happens more in inpatient facilities, which are what we are looking at right now. And in fact, stalkers of mental health professionals are more likely to have an outpatient treatment record than an inpatient treatment record. There's also no data to suggest that in areas where mental health providers use their full names, they experience more stalking. So we are working with individuals who are in extraordinarily vulnerable positions, and positions that we know historically have exposed them to violence and abuse of power. These proposed changes are allowing for less transparency of mental health care for these people. And if the safety net relies on internal grievance procedures within organizations that are fraught with corruption and abuse, this is not a reasonable safety net. And it is not safe or reasonable to expect that those with a vested interest in protecting the organization will adequately address these complaints. This is also not just my conclusion. Our own state inspectors general released an audit of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and they showed almost 90% of inmate complaints are handled inadequately. If we suspect that only 10%, roughly, of these complaints are handled appropriately, I would not feel comfortable granting exceptions to organizations that have revealed themselves to be untrustworthy of treating these clients with dignity or respect, granting them humanity. I'm not sure how we can comfortably as a board say that we are committed to transparency and then also have the most vulnerable populations in the most corrupt organizations be given the least amount of transparency with their mental health providers. That's it.
Kelly.
Hello. I don't quarrel with your skill or your research, Roseanne. I never have. The way the proposed language is written, it would also allow private correctional facilities to escape that notice. It includes local, state, or federal correctional authorities, including correctional settings operated under contract by governmental entities. So that includes private prisons. It also could foreseeably include immigration detention. And I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, because if the federal government is designating everyone who goes into immigration detention as a potential criminal, foreseeably clinicians who work in those contracted federal immigration detention institutions would escape notice. and I certainly don't think they should. So it is not unreasonable to ask people working with these vulnerable populations to notice their license number and name. I simply think it's not unreasonable to do that. So, but again, I do not quarrel with your research or your language.
Eleanor.
Okay, so I wasn't totally prepared to talk about this, but since it came up, being someone who actually worked in the prison in a high level 3, 4, that was something I was aware of as far as, using your last name. And, that is something that they've actually used just for the safety, because some of the people that we've worked with have been convicted of some really very severe crimes. So that is their own policy that they've done to protect the people working there. I know that they do have some type of internal review. I would suggest continue to keep what they have in place. And if the board wants to consider maybe a pathway of reevaluating maybe the decisions that have been made, I would suggest that alternative route be presented versus changing where you would have to provide their names, because that's a very, very severe and that's a big concern working in a prison. And my concern is people might not want to work there, and it's really needed, especially with the vulnerable population. There was another thing I needed to say. Okay, the other question I had was, in the policy that you presented, would that also cover, because a lot of times they have a alternative sentence that might be, say, probation in a program, but maybe the person is monitored by a probation officer. So does this cover instances like that also?
No, it does not. It's just designed specifically for correctional facilities.
Yeah, so my suggestion is, I don't know what the policy is for working with people in outpatient that are under the jurisdiction of the CDCR or the jails, but I would say that would be probably a similar concern, and especially if it's working within a community, that there's easy access. So to someone who's maybe performing the role and, maybe it could be at risk if certain information is provided.
I think it will go to Board Member Thies and then to Board Member Huff.
Has staff determined how other states approach this issue?
We have not. We've looked at DCA. Most healing arts under DCA are just carved out. They don't have to comply with providing the name.
Board Member Heft.
I think I might have missed the takeaway, Board Member Uribe. Am I understanding correctly? You're saying that you agree with the exception for inpatient work in inpatient corrections, and you also want to extend that to probation work outside of the prison, where it does not currently exist?
I would say yes, I do agree, but I'm saying, since you had brought up the concern about a vulnerable population possibly not having their concerns addressed in the prison system properly, that maybe an alternative route could be like a pathway for maybe the BBS or someone to be able to review what the complaints were, rather than totally dismiss and just let it be run in-house. That could be a possible alternative option.
Any other board member comments or questions? Or
John Sobek here. A question about the language that's added in green about the licensees and registrants being responsible for making sure their programs had this in place. Can you tell me what the origin of that was?
Is it on? There we go. It was just to add a little bit of accountability so that it makes them responsible for making sure that there's a process in place, not just like, oh, that's my employer's responsibility. This is saying, hey, licensee, you need to make sure that this is actually happening if you're abiding by this exemption.
So if I'm a licensee in a correctional facility and it's not in place,
Then
what is my duty then?
you need to provide the information.
I'm just trying to imagine how that might play out practically in the real world.
If we were to get a complaint and we were to find that procedures were not being handled properly, then the only people we have a jurisdiction over are the licensees. So that's their responsibility to provide the notice. If we were to get a complaint against the licensee and they hadn't provided the information and we found that the correctional agency had made no effort to assist and they knew that and they didn't, then it could be a problem.
It just feels like that putting an enormous burden on licensees and registrants who are employees, relatively low-level employees in these systems.
So we don't have the authority, we don't oversee CDCR. So it's the only way. I mean, and this goes longer to address it than most of the other healing arts have, that just say you don't have to do it. So it's kind of we're trying to sort of work to make the best scenario possible that doesn't just carve them out from providing it, but accounts for the danger that certain individuals might legitimately be in. So but we can't say, hey, CDCR, we have authority over you. You need to provide us your records for audit. So
okay,
that's where we're at.
Okay. That would probably be a thing that would limit me from wanting to even work for those systems if I was responsible for that. I'm just putting that out there. I also want to recognize, since we started this journey of looking at this legislation, the landscape of incarceration has changed dramatically. And recognizing what Board Member Ranasinghe has said, I think there are so many layers to this that would not provide protection to public, which includes people who are incarcerated, that I am now leaning away from this, which is unfortunate because we had so many witnesses come forward and share their really personal stories about what this would mean to them. And yet, as we're looking at this kind of bigger scope of the landscape that exists now, it's very difficult for me to support this legislation at this point.
Any other board member comments or questions this time? Do we have any in-house comments? Okay. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, now's the time to raise a hand for agenda item 24. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. And our first request is coming from Shanti Ezrin. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hi again, Shanti Ezrin with CAMPT. Roseanne, thank you very much for bringing these concerns to attention in the conversation today. Kind of agreeing with what's been talked about and what's been covered. This is definitely a very tough one here to discuss, as we do recognize the concerns about safety on one end as well as on the other end, what the board members' comments today have been about in terms of what the best solution would be. So we really do appreciate your research on this and crafting language that tries to, as best as it can, address both ends as best as possible, allowing exceptions in certain settings that you covered while making sure the employing agency's complaint process is in place. Beyond that, I think we're just looking forward to hearing a little bit more feedback and seeing how best to sort of approach this. I think that's kind of just what we can offer at this point, and hoping there can be a little bit more conversation as we just try to balance both ends as best as possible here. Thank you.
There are no other requests for public comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Board Member Huft.
I just want to double back to my earlier comment about what the research suggests about safety concerns. I am worried that when we give a response that there are reasonable issues on both sides, that we are mistaking a concern for safety with an empirical reality. There is not. Real data that suggests these people are in danger. Their mental health providers are in danger, working with acute inpatient psychiatric clients or working with incarcerated folk. That does not change that mental health providers may have concerns. Sure, that's fine. But I don't want us to use a concern as synonymous with an actuality. And as we move forward trying to find this appropriate balance, I hope we don't fall into that fallacy of thinking that one's feelings are an actual truth.
Kelly?
You know, and the other thing that really bothers me about this is that in the proposed language, you've parsed out like state, local, federal correctional facilities, correctional institutions, and institutions under contract with federal correctional institutions. That's nice in the statute, but that's not the way it actually works, because people are all sort of you got these big institutions and they're all sort of thrown together, and just because someone is in detention doesn't necessarily mean that they're dangerous. So if that applies to a person working in a whole institution, are they going to be doing that with everybody, right? I mean, that person, they could be speaking to people who are absolutely no danger whatsoever. And they could be speaking to someone who is legitimately a danger. But that person is also being denied of the notice right by dint of, for instance, their comprehensive policy. So I can't support the proposed language. I'm very sorry. I'm not very sorry. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Okay. Before I return to you, let me just check and see anybody on this side.
Just a question, what do you need from us? Do we need, someone needs to make a motion or what? I think it's been a lot of discussion, deliberation. Where are we going with this?
So yeah, I mean, somebody could make a motion. I just want to make sure that everybody's feeling heard before we do that.
Yeah, I
So
think-
Board Member
yeah.
Huff, do you have a motion or a comment? Or
I motion to deny these changes.
Second.
All right.
You actually don't need a motion for that.
I'm sorry,
You don't need a motion. If there's no action, we don't need to take any action. It would be a motion to approve or no action at all. You guys don't need to make a motion to not approve.
But
Then
thank
do
you
we
for your
wa-
work on this.
Of course.
That-
Provide direction then on what we'd like to see if it came back, or
I'm not
It
sure
really
how to
depends.
provide direction on that because I don't feel comfortable granting an exception to full standards of care and transparency. So short of reading through this, short of just don't make any of these changes, I'm not sure what the direction would be. Maybe Roseanne, you can help with.
Yeah, no, there would it would just not move forward. There's not really, so this is probably the best option we're going to get on the table. There's not really, it's either do something or not do something. So yeah, it would just be to not do something.
then before we're done, is there somebody who wants to make a motion to approve?
I actually wanted to make a comment real quick before we make a motion, if possible.
Well, there doesn't have to be a motion. I just want to make sure there's an opportunity, but
I just wanted to see what the research says and to hear what the concern is regarding the agencies that are requesting this exemption, because it's easy to say that there's no research that says that it's, people are more at risk or not, but I would actually like to see that versus just hear that being said.
Yeah, I mean, we could bring research. I don't know that that's going to change the end result based on what I'm hearing. But
And also to hear the reasons why people within these agencies are wanting the exemption.
I think we did hear from,
Yeah.
Yeah, we have in some in our policy and advocacy, that's where they reached out, and then and then the communication between them. So
John?
And just to help you understand, at PNA, we did have amazingly heartfelt people in the system sharing with us their concerns about that. We did hear that very anecdotal lived energy part of it. The thing that's changing a little bit too is Board Member Huff's access to research. Apparently, you've done a very deep dive into this, which has provided some different viewpoints on it. And also, once again, as I mentioned, since the beginning of this, the landscape of incarceration has changed dramatically. And that's part of why I'm pulling back support on this.
So just a question is, how much responsibility will BBS have if something happens? If we allow this to just go and everybody has to give their names in the prisons and stuff. So.
I just wanted to add, this is Christina. The webcast for that policy and advocacy committee meeting where we had the guest speakers speaking on this issue is posted on the website. You can watch the recording of that meeting if you're so inclined to do that.
And so in terms of liability, I can't really say. That would be a case by case basis. So I can't speak to that. In terms of next steps, we could see an effort, from the CDCR or the unions that represent these employees to do their own bill. And at which time the board would have to respond to that and consider it, any proposal that they might make. But other than that, it's kind of hard to go into the what ifs could happen. It's sort of, if we don't want to move forward with it, then we won't move forward. And, they might take action, they may not.
Okay. Any other comments from board members?
Just follow up with Christina. Do you have the date of that meeting? If you don't, I can look for it.
It's January 15th,
I think it was
I think.
October. No, it was the October PNA meeting. I think it's, hold on, October 24th, 2025. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Seeing no other comments, I think we've already gone out to, do we need to go back out for comment, for public comment?
We need to go back out for comment.
We already did that.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yes.
What's that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, do we have any in-house comments? Moderator, do we have any public comments online?
All right, round 2 of public comment for agenda item 24. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests.
Yeah, they had a lot of discussion.
We're going to take just a few more
Okay.
seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. We'll be moving on to item 25. Sorry. Oh, wait, it is 11:40. Sorry.
Yeah. Could I have one quick moment? I do want to recognize Roseanne for all the hard work you put into this. We do thank you for that. And also to Senator, how do you pronounce her last name?
Ochoa Bogue.
Ochoa Bo for joining with us to potentially sponsor this. We want to move it forward. I just want to thank both of you for your hard work on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then before you begin, Steve, I want to make sure we had talked about lunch at 11:30. Are you okay with proceeding with the agenda without a break?
It's going to be a while, a long one, but I'm fine either way.
this, I mean, we have this. And updates for legislation, which will. get
Those will
through
be quick.
So,
I'll get through it as quick as I can, so.
well, we don't want to, but I think maybe we just proceed.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're giving staff the appropriate breaks. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Christy.
I just turned it off. Hi, Christy Berger, Regulatory Manager. I'm here with our legal counsel, Christy Shields. So this is our regulation package on continuing education and a couple of related sections on exams and renewals. This package was noticed to the public and the comment period ended in January, and we received 6 written comments. So we have our recommended response to the comments. So this is fairly lengthy, but I'll do my best to summarize. So the first comment came from the California Associations of Marriage and Family Therapists. Their first comment has to do with there's a form that's incorporated into our regulations, which is kind of unusual at this point, but it's the request for a waiver of continuing education. And to obtain that waiver, there is a definition, or the form currently states that there has to be a substantially limiting one or more life activities. So CAMP's comment is in relation to that. Their concern is that our current regulation defines a total physical or mental disability for an immediate family member, because you can also get this accommodation, a waiver, if you're a caregiver for a family member. But that this form does not define substantially limited one or more life activities for the licensee. So it talks about the federal regulation, which provides a definition, and they feel that a lack of clear definition risks a narrow interpretation of determining whether a licensee's condition meets the standard. So CAMP requested we consider what constitutes substantially limited one or more life activities. So we are recommending that we accept this comment and make some modifications to the proposed regulatory language. Federal law, the ADA defines disability as a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities of such individual. California law, under the Fair Employment and Housing Act, actually was amended to remove the requirement that a limitation be substantial to qualify as a disability or protected medical condition, and only requires an individual to be limited in performing a major life activity. Under state law, a disability or health condition limits a major life activity if it makes achieving a major life activity difficult, and it defines major life activity broadly to include physical, mental, and social activities and working. So we feel that we should amend the regulation to reflect these changes to California law, since the ADA does allow states to provide greater protection under state law. So we recommended edits just include some minor changes to conform with how the California law is written, and also to refer to that section of California law that has that definition. The second comment talks about timing barriers for the CE waiver requests. Right now, the law requires that those waiver requests be submitted at least 60 days prior to the license expiration date. So that would be that license expiration date in that 2-year period prior to that expiration date is the CE that they would be asking a waiver for. So they are saying that they feel that that 60-day advance submission may be problematic due to an unexpected nature of the medical condition. So they request that we consider allowing exceptions for licensees for that 60-day requirement, that form be submitted 60 days prior to the expiration date for a waiver. We are declining to make any changes, or we recommend that we decline to make any changes. In our experience, the 60-day timeframe is necessary to allow staff to adequately review and investigate these waiver submissions, and for the applicants to address any deficiencies prior to their license expiring. In addition, this comment is not directed at the proposed changes we're making, or to the processes or procedures we used in adopting this regulation. The next comment from CAMP is, it's kind of a question, and they're asking that we address that. So one of the proposed amendments is adding the word California before law and ethics to clarify that coursework in this area must address standards specific to California. But CAMP is asking that we clarify that whether this also would include federal law. So we do accept this, are recommending that we accept this comment and make changes to the regulatory language to refer to another section in our law that specifies the law and ethics coursework that someone coming in from out of state would have to meet in order to practice in California, because that law section mentions state and federal laws. So what we would do is add a section that basically said California law and ethics includes training in any of the coursework subjects specified in blah, 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 all the different sections that apply to our different licensees. The next comment is in regard to, there's some concerns, and it's not just from CAMT, as you'll hear, there's some commenters, other commenters who have a concern regarding CE credit for attendance at BBS meetings. That proposed amendment would allow up to 6 hours of CE credit through attendance at BBS board and committee meetings. They acknowledge this change may increase stakeholder participation, but they have concerns whether all meeting content would consistently provide the quality of educational content that meets CE standards as outlined in current board regulation. Not all BBS board and committee content address subject matter related to direct or indirect client care. For example, agenda items in the newly established Outreach and Education Committee typically include social media outreach strategies or newsletter development. This differs significantly from agenda items in the Policy and Advocacy Committee, which addresses laws and policy issues that directly impact clinical practice. Additionally, clarification is needed about how the board would monitor and verify meaningful engagement and participation by attendees who participate virtually. So we are recommending that we accept the comment in part relating to concerns that committee meeting attendance may not consistently provide the quality of educational content that meets CE standards outlined in the board's current regulation. And we've made some suggested changes to the regulatory language. While one of the sections in our law applies to CE courses only and does not really apply to those CE course activities that allowed CE activities that are not courses, we do believe that some committee meetings may not provide those learning opportunities relevant to licensee practice and therefore may not fulfill that intended purpose in continuing education. So to ensure relevant learning opportunities, we propose to limit these hours to just board meeting attendance and not allow committee meetings to count towards CE. While the Policy and Advocacy Committee does discuss laws and policies that affect licensee practice, the board meetings provide a greater consistency in this type of content that would provide greater and more consistent learning opportunities. It's also a bit cleaner. It doesn't say that in there, but it's a little cleaner if we just say board meeting, to help licensees understand what they can get credit for. We decline to make any changes regarding the commenters' concern about the board's ability to ensure meaningful engagement and participation by attendees. The staff we've looked at various options very thoroughly and determined that the proposed method that's already in the regulations would adequately assure that licensee was present at the meeting, including maintaining a record indicating time of arrival and departure. There's not really any way to ensure meaningful engagement and participation. The fifth comment from CAMT is concerns regarding CE credit for supervisory experience, which would allow those who provide direct supervision to earn up to 18 hours of CE credit, which is half of the CE that's allowed. CAMT recognizes that supervisors play a critical role in training and guiding the next generation of therapists and believes supervisors should be held to a high professional standard. They believe it's imperative that supervisors remain current on applicable laws, ethics, and developments in the profession. And although providing supervision does offer some inherent educational value through professional engagement with associates and trainees, it does not replace the structural learning and content review provided through formal CE coursework. While we support allowing CE credit for supervisor activities, CAMT requests the BBS consider reducing the maximum allowable hours from 18 to 6. A limit of 6 hours would be consistent with other board-provided activities that may be counted towards CE. Additionally, CAMT seeks clarification that a CE credit earned towards supervisory experience would not overlap with the existing requirement for 6 hours of law and ethics coursework and that supervisors complete 6 hours of supervision-specific CE during each renewal cycle. Our recommended response is to accept this comment. While the board recognizes learning opportunities inherent in providing supervision, the number of hours allowed could have a negative impact on a licensee's ability to learn about important updates in the profession. So we propose to make that amendment to limit to 6 hours. We also propose to add language clarifying that CE credit earned through supervisory experience will not count toward the 6 hours of law and ethics required of licensees each renewal cycle, nor the 6 hours of supervision-specific CE coursework required of supervisors each renewal cycle. So the intent is to ensure that licensees learn about important updates regarding legal and ethical requirements, as well as updates regarding the provision of supervision. The next comment is from Robin Anderson, LMFT. They expressed their opposition to providing CE credit for a licensee providing supervision. The concern is that we would only be requiring proof that supervision meetings occurred and that not that the clinical supervisor learned anything or performed any meaningful work in the course of providing supervision. There would not be any accountability or oversight, nor a post-supervision meeting or evaluation, reflection paper, or test of any kind to ensure that a form of systematic learning took place as defined in the board regulations. The board would be allowing half of the required CE credits, 18 out of the 36 for the supervisor's renewal cycle, to be gained simply by performing their work duties. And while supervisors undoubtedly learn a lot in the course of being a supervisor, this means that a supervisor could perform 18 hours of supervision, attend a 6-hour CE course on supervision, and attend a 6-hour CE course on law and ethics, and then the only 6 remaining hours of CE on other topics. I do not believe it's in the profession's best interest to encourage narrowing the scope of learning experiences that a licensee would be exposed to over the course of a 2-year period. So just similar to how we responded to the CAMPS comment, we accept this comment in part. And what we're going to suggest is that we amend it to allowing 6 hours for similar reasons as we explained for CAMPed. It's okay for me to summarize like that, right? Okay. And then the board declines to make any changes in response to the comment expressing concern regarding accepting supervision as an allowable activity without ensuring that a form of systematic learning took place, and essentially recommending that no credit be given for this activity at all, because there's no way for us to ensure all of those things. Our regulations currently define a continuing education course as a form of systematic learning and does not pertain to non-CE course activities. The intended learning experience is through a supervisor's preparation for providing their supervisee with learning experiences, and requiring like an evaluation, reflection paper would hold these licensees to a higher standard than what is required by the board for any other acceptable CE activity, including courses. The next comment is from Kent Campbell, LMFT. Expressed concerns regarding CE for providing supervision, very similar concerns to the last 2 commenters. They also had concern about CE credit for attending meetings. This very similar concern as CAMPed, except for one difference is that there's no formal curriculum, no assessment of learning, no requirement to integrate the material into clinical practice. They also brought up the explicit exclusion of watching recorded meetings to count towards CE. They ask if the educational content of these meetings warrant CE credit, why should the format of attendance matter? The exclusion suggests the provision is designed to incentivize physical or virtual presence rather than to promote genuine learning. Taken together, these provisions would permit a licensee to satisfy up to 24 hours, 2/3 of the total CE requirement through activities that do not involve engagement with new clinical research or treatment approaches. This represents a significant departure from the fundamental purpose of continuing education, which is ensuring that licensees remain current in their knowledge and skills to protect the public. So our recommended response is that we accept the comment in part regarding the provision of supervision and meeting attendance, similar to what we already discussed. So we are making the same recommendations to address this comment We do decline to make any changes in response to the commenter's question about the implications of excluding recorded meetings. The board believes that requiring a licensee to attend the live meeting increases the potential for active synchronous type learning and engagement. The next comment is from Berenice Rosio, LMFT. They expressed concern that about the provision or allowing 18 hours of CE for providing supervision. They are concerned that decreasing these requirements may lead some supervisors to discontinue pursuing additional education and become professionally stagnant and ultimately lower the quality of supervision that's provided. In the current political and social climate, ongoing education, particularly for those who serve as mentors and supervisors in their field, is paramount. They believe this runs counter to ethical mandates and that may result in supervisors becoming disconnected from advances in the field. They also talked about one of the justifications that we wrote up for this proposal is that it may increase the number of licensees willing to provide supervision. And this commenter believes that reducing administrative burdens may be a more effective strategy. For example, eliminating or streamlining multiple forms currently required of supervisors could meaningfully decrease barriers to providing supervision. Additionally, the recent permanent allowance of supervision via teleconferencing represents a significant positive step toward increasing availability of supervisors. They also recommend that we create a centralized section on our website to post announcements for practicum sites in need of supervisors in rural and underserved areas particularly. Okay, this last one is similar to the a prior comment. So we accept the comment. We're going to recommend limiting the CE for supervision to 6 hours. And while we do appreciate the commenter's suggestion regarding reducing administrative burdens for supervisors, we decline to make any changes in response to those suggestions that are not directed to the proposed changes noticed for this current rulemaking proposal or to the processes and procedures the board used in adopting this proposed regulation. The next comment is from Kurt Widholm. Their concerns are regarding the examination administration section. It's just a minor technical concern, which is that we have inserted the vendor's name, which is Pearson VUE, into the regulation. They feel it's unusual for a regulation to explicitly encode the specific vendor's name, and that they suggest using a broader term such as the exam administrator or vendor. They feel there could be some unintended consequences, primarily by creating a procedural and legislative barrier should the board need to change vendors in the future. They feel it's having to amend the regulation in that case could be an unnecessary administrative hurdle that could delay operational transitions. The recommended response is to decline to make any changes due to this comment, as the name of the vendor is necessary to provide exam candidates with appropriate notice of the actual vendor contracted by the board and to comply with California's Administrative Procedure Act clarity standard, which requires regulations to be written or displayed so that the meaning of regulations will be understood by persons directly affected. According to rules adopted by the Office of Administrative Law, a regulation is presumed to not comply with this clarity standard if a regulation can, on its face, be reasonably and logically interpreted to have more than one meaning. The proposal resolves ambiguity regarding who the board's vendor is and their specific requirements for administering the board's exams. So this is consistent with regulatory changes made by other agencies and approved by the Office of Administrative Law as meeting the clarity standard, such as the dental board had a recent change. And while the change in exam vendors could delay operational transitions due to necessary regulation changes pertaining to the vendor, the board would account for that length of time to move through the process while planning for the transition. And should the need to change vendors occur in an emergency situation, the board would pursue the emergency regulation process, which has a much faster time frame. They also had concerns about the proposal for allowing CE credit for attending board meetings. They, very similar to prior commenters, additionally have concerns with allowing CE credit for providing supervision. Very similar, yeah, very similar comments. I'm just kind of scanning to make sure there's nothing that sticks out as different. Okay, the comment that he did have that's a little different is if they feel it's unclear on whether these CE credits for supervision would count toward the licensee's mandatory supervision specific CE course hours. So he's asking that to maintain the integrity of the supervision specific CE course requirements that we clarify this. So our recommended response is to accept in part the comment expressing concern about allowable hours for non-CE course activities, supervision and meeting attendance. So similar response there. In response to the request to clarify whether CE credits for supervision would count toward the licensee's mandatory supervision specific CE hours, we propose to add language clarifying that CE credit earned through supervisory experience would not count toward the training or coursework required of supervisors. We declined to make any changes to make in response to the comment expressing concern about excluding viewing of recording meetings from counting towards CE, similar to a prior commenter. This last comment was more of a question from Kathleen Hawks, LMFT. She had concern about a specific portion of Section 1887.1, which defines conviction for the purposes of a required disclosure at license renewal, which should include traffic citations or infractions for a fine of which $500 or more was imposed, as opposed to the current language which specifies $500 or less. The commenter is concerned the board may inundate it with fix-it tickets and the like instead of more severe concerns. The board is rejecting, we recommend that we reject this comment, even though it's more of a question, and decline to make any changes. The comment appears to be a misunderstanding, as the last section of the subsection A4 states, for the purposes of this paragraph, conviction does not include any of the following. And then the next section states traffic citations or infractions for which a fine of $500 or less was imposed. So this means that only traffic citations or infractions for which a fine of $500 or more where it was imposed are considered a conviction for the purposes of reporting at the time of renewal. You think we should stop here to see that discussion, or should we proceed to B? Because the next is adoption of amendments, so. Oh, let me try the one on the left.
There. So I think we just want to go over some additional recommended changes that I had suggested to add the provisions for inactive renewal. And then we can talk about whether the board would like to, at this stage, accept the recommendations of staff to respond to the comments as she's indicated, or whether you want to respond differently to these comments, because that's the motion for this particular section that we're on, which is section A of the agenda.
Okay, so I'll go on to section B and talk about that change, additional change you wanted to make, and then we can stop there.
Yeah, I would just explain that in addition to the comments that this is Christy Schills, Regulations Counsel for the record. In addition to the comments that were received, there was one issue that I wanted to bring to your attention that we should be considering for regulatory changes. And if you could just go over that, then we can proceed to discuss the comment responses.
Okay, so this has to do with renewal requirements for licensees. And if a licensee doesn't renew prior to their expiration date, the license becomes delinquent the day after. And some of the language we were adding here is a condition of renewal on or before the expiration date of the license. A licensee shall submit a completed renewal application and the renewal fee required by section 1816. We wanted to add language that states on or before the expiration of their license or within 3 years after its expiration date, which would be delinquent. And then adding that they would also have to pay a delinquency fee if that's applicable. So just clarifying what the fees are, because we really just referred to it very generally. We want to be as specific as needed. And then for registrants, we also needed to address delinquent renewal requirements. They don't have a delinquency fee, so we don't need to mention that, but we did want to mention that limit because they can only renew a registration 5 times. It's good for 6 years. So we want to just add that before the expiration date of their registration or within 5 years from their initial expiration date in compliance with these other sections of the code. Okay, so we can stop there and see if the board members want to discuss any of the proposed changes or the proposed responses to the comments and any of those, including the language changes in response.
Board members? Dr. Boyd?
Yeah, Nick Boyd, LPCC member. I appreciate the comments. I think many of them were very thoughtful. And I also agree with the staff reducing the supervisory CE hours down to 6. I mean, I had concerns from the beginning, with that being quite high. So I appreciate that, and I support that change. So thank you for doing that. And then the concerns with the BBS credit, can you just, I think you mentioned in here, but just remind me, so they're self-attesting to attending the meetings, or do they have to submit proof of like attendance through logs? How is that being verified?
Yeah, so if they come in person, there's a sign-in sheet. So what we would do is modify that a little bit to add a sign-out portion. And we would announce if you're here for CE, make sure you do this. And then for online participants, what they would have to do is, I'm trying to remember here, we added some mechanism in there for them to, when they log in to participate in the meeting, I think they have to enter their email address just so that it'll keep track for us who's actually attended. So it'll show that. So that's something we'll have to do internally that's a little different, is maintaining that record on our end. So we did include those mechanisms to ensure there's a proof.
And then this is Christy Schills, Regulations Counsel. From a compliance perspective, they would just self-certify they've completed their CE on renewal. And then if they're audited, then the board would check its records to verify they had attended either the board meeting in person or online to make sure that they accurately reported compliance.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I make a comment on that? This is Eleanor. Sorry.
Thanks.
Just being a person who works with people who regularly attend meetings, sometimes you may need to specify how much of the meeting they need to attend, because lots of times people come in 30 minutes late, leave early. So that's just a suggestion.
The proposal states that they receive credit basically hour for hour. So they don't get 6 hours just for coming, it has to be logged. So we would add a time on that sign-in as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other board comments? Board Member Heft and then Board Member Ranasinghe.
Justin Huff, thank you very much for your work putting this together and responding to comments. I'd like to motion to direct staff to proceed as recommended as specified and provide the responses to the comments as indicated in the recommended responses.
I second that. Eleanor Uribe.
Okay. Kelly, did you still want to speak?
No, it's okay. I'll withdraw my comment.
Okay. All right. And we go to public comment. My brain's getting tired on Friday, so any comments
Board Member
from
Sobek
in-house? Oh, sorry, Board Member Sobek.
So this motion is only doing the first part. The delinquency thing is in the second motion?
Yes, the delinquency is the text portion of the agenda item, which is the second portion, the
So
motion.
it's a separate motion.
So
for
this
that.
motion is only addressing the
The
comment
comments,
response. Cool.
right.
Okay. All right. Seeing no comments in-house, moderator, do we have any comments online?
All right, WebEx, now is the time to tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand. And our first request is coming from Shanti Ezrin. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, Shanti Ezrin with Camps. Really just wanted to make comment here to express our gratitude and thanks to staff for considering our comments and making the revisions to the proposed text. So really appreciate the addition of definition and clear reference to California law for the limited one or more major life activities, as well as the clarification that California law and ethics encompasses all laws applicable to California practitioners, including relevant federal laws within what you had included as reference statutes. And then lastly, just regarding the CE credit for new activities, also just wanted to thank you for the modifications made related to both the attendance at BBS meetings and supervisory experience. We recognize the valuable learning opportunities that both attending BBS meetings and providing supervision can offer. These revisions that you discussed today will really help just make sure that meeting content consistently delivers meaningful educational value, and adjusting the number of CE hours for supervision down to 6 will still allow licensees the ability to stay informed about important updates in the profession. So all that to say, thank you very much for the modifications, and we're looking forward to seeing this move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other requests for public comment.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we're ready for a vote on this. Christina, will you take the vote, please?
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Lenore Uribe,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinga,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
John Sovik,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Larez Bailey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then it looks like we're looking for another motion on the second part. So do we have a board member that wishes to make that motion? Oh, if we have any comments on this.
I have a question about it. Just understanding the language we've done pretty recently about inactive and coming back active and retired and coming back in. Are the definitions between delinquent and inactive pretty crystal clear the way they're written? Will there be any overlap that we need to be aware of as we're writing through this?
That it is pretty crystal clear in our law, those distinctions. They actually each have their own law section, retired licenses, inactive licenses, and then a portion for active licenses. So I think we're good on that.
And then just want to clarify that the text we're dealing with is for active renewal right here. The inactive requirements are in statute. So I misspoke earlier when I said inactive, I'm sorry. But what I was trying to get at here was I realized when I looked at the text again months later, which often happens where you miss things and you see them later, is that we'd written the text to only address people who are current and renewing, not people who've lapsed. Even though the process is they would use the same application, the only difference between someone renewing when they've expired and are reinstating is they pay the delinquency fee, at least for licensees. Registrants don't pay a delinquency fee. They just have to comply and submit the application. So I realized that I had overlooked that. I apologize for that. And I've added in the text just to cover people who we call it delinquent, but they're truly expired and but are able to renew in an active status if they submit all the required documentation and pay the delinquency fee. So I was just trying to address that issue.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
then also just kind of maybe a staff philosophical question. Never heard any discussion of delinquency fees in this concept before. I'm just wondering what the impetus for is and why it's suddenly coming forward now.
I think it's just, I'm not sure why it hasn't come up in previous, I can't really speak to that. As far as our, I don't know, sorry, I just blanked out.
So is your concern that we've never
Do we
mentioned-
currently collect delinquency fees?
Yes,
Is this
it's
part
in
of policy
statute.
already? Okay.
Yeah. It
I've
is in
never heard them discussed
statute.
before. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's really important to make sure we put it in here so there's notice to people of this. If they let their licenses lapse, they're going to have to pay that fee in order to reinstate as active in continuing practice in practice. So again, I apologize for missing that earlier, and then we would have had the discussion. You would have been engaged on that. I apologize and just wanted to make sure we corrected it. Thank you.
Any other board comments? Right, do we have a motion? Or I'll make,
Whoever wants to make the motion, if you want me to read that paragraph, I can read it pretty fast for you.
I'll make
I
the
would-
motion, but if you want to,
If that's the
nobody wanted to read
condition.
the paragraph, but
Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, so motion A,
Yes.
which is if you have no suggested changes to the proposed text.
Correct.
Okay. So the motion would be to approve the proposed modified regulation text for CCR sections 1822.51, 1829.2, 1877.2, 1887, 1887.1, 1887.2, 1887.3, 1887.4.2, 1887.4.3, and 1887.12 as set forth in attachment A, and direct staff to take all steps necessary to complete the rulemaking process, including preparing modified text for a notice of a 15-day public comment period. If after that 15-day comment period, the board does not receive any objections or adverse recommendations specifically directed at the modified text, the notice, or to the procedures followed by the board in proposing or adopting this action, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the proposed regulations and rulemaking file and adopt amendments to Title 16 CCR, Sections 1822.51, 1829.2, 1877.2, 1887, 1887.1, 1887.2, 1887.3, 1887.4.2, 1887.4.3, and 1887.12 as set forth in attachment A.
Does anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay, Dr. Walker, thank you. Christina, oh wait, we got to do public comment. Any comments in-house? Okay, seeing none. Moderator, do we have any comments online?
All right, time to raise a hand on the second motion. If you'd like to make a comment, tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a few more seconds to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue with the motion?
Yes, thank you. And Christina, please take the vote.
Rebecca Thies,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Justin Huff,
Yes.
Kelly Ronan,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Dr. Nicholas Boyd,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Lorez Bailey,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, everyone. It was good to see you. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Steve, looking at you, we have a couple items left, but does staff need a break? So
Like we're all good.
It's going to be really quick.
okay, I just want to make sure we're not overdoing it with y'all. Okay.
Thanks, though.
David,
yes. Sorry.
David and online, just wanted to make sure, solid team, we have just a couple more short items to go through and just want to make sure that you don't need a break right now. It should be very quick though.
If I get a lunch break before 2, I'm happy.
We will definitely make sure you get that. Thank you for your patience.
All right, thank you. Then we'll move on to agenda item 26, update on board-sponsored and board-monitored legislation. Roseanne.
Thanks, Wendy. So a couple of updates for you. The board is pursuing 2 legislative proposals that it's sponsoring this year. The first has been introduced. It is AB 1598 by Assemblymember Quirk Silva. And this is the proposal that begins the restructuring and modernizing the board's licensing process to kind of make the licensure process more accessible and responsive to real world challenges faced by applicants. So it's proposing to remove the requirement that associates attempt the California Law and Ethics exam each year to renew their registration, instead letting them take it when they're ready. It is increasing the amount of time supervised experience hours remain valid from 6 to 7 years, and the length of a registration number from to a total of 7 years, up from 6. And then it allows associates with a subsequent registration number to request that one-time 2-year hardship extension that we had talked about previously to work in one private practice or professional corporation with their subsequent number. And the bill also includes the language the board approved, modernizing the exemption language for faith-based counseling, clarifying the criteria more about when faith-based counseling is exempt from licensure. So that bill, like I said, was introduced, and we will provide you updates as it moves through the process. And then the second bill that we are sort of partially sponsoring is each year the Senate Business and Professions Committee runs an omnibus, or what they call a committee bill, that has mostly technical, non-substantive changes. So there were several smaller items, cleanup items that the board had approved back in November. And so we've asked for those to be included in that committee bill. The committee bill doesn't, it usually introduces sometime in March, so it has not been introduced yet. So we will continue to keep you updated as things progress.
Thank you. Wow. All right, try again. Any board member comments or questions? Okay. All right, any in-house comments? Okay. Moderator, do we have any online comments?
All right, WebEx, time to raise a hand for agenda item 26. Please tap that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on to item 27. An update on board rulemaking proposals. Christy.
Thank you. Most of these you have seen all of these because you've approved all of them, but the first one is our advertising changes. That was approved by OAL. It takes effect April 1st. We're updating our advertising guidelines and all of that are on the website, and that will be posted prior to that date. Our fee reductions proposal was approved by OAL, and that's going to take effect July 1st of this year. The continuing education one we just talked about. Our English as a second language additional examination time, adding that extra option to qualify for ESL, it's still in our DCA production phase review. We're expecting that to, we're getting really close on that one. So there's just been a couple of slowdowns there, but we're getting there. The AMF-TRB national exam, Steve talked about that. And then the licensed educational experience requirement, I'm still preparing those documents for the production phase review. I've had some other competing priorities, but hoping to get back to that soon. And that's the update.
Thank you. Any board questions or comments? Seeing none. Any in-house comments? Seeing none. Moderator, any online comments?
All right, WebEx, this is agenda item 27. If you'd like to make a comment, raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial-in users dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. We're going to take just a moment now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. Moving on to item 28, suggestions for future agenda items. Are there any future agenda item suggestions from board members? Mr. Sovic.
John Sovak. I'd like to propose a future agenda item to review and evaluate current practices related to the professional supervision of associates with the goal of ensuring consistent quality, ethical compliance, and alignment with organizational standards and state licensure requirements for supervisors.
Gotcha. All right. Any other board members with suggestions for future agenda items?
Jess, could I follow up on Board Member Sobek's
Sure.
recommendation? Given our earlier discussion, it seems to be time sensitive. So I'm wondering how soon we might at least have an idea when that could be agendized? If you guys could come back with that at some point soon.
Can you clarify again? What was, so I can get it down here, just word for word what you had? Or do you have it written down? Oh, you have it. I'll get it for you. I mean, we could bring it back right away, whether it's going to be a full discussion or, I mean, if we want to bring it back like at the next board meeting, I honestly, depending on what we can see with the work, it could be a general discussion, or if we're able to do more work on it, a more robust discussion. So if that makes sense, with timing involved, because it is it's a big subject. So.
I
mean,
validate and review current practice.
So what I'm thinking, maybe, I mean, if we wanted to bring it right back to the board to kind of maybe bring that back, we can kind of do some talking points for then the board to discuss fully of what they might be looking for again, and we can kind of go through that to kind of identify like the areas of focus that we can
Yeah, that's what I'm
address.
thinking. It'd be helpful to at least start the conversation because it seems like there's a lot of moving parts. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
If
because that
that's
could be
okay.
a lot, a huge topic. So
And
maybe a discussion to really narrow down where we want staff to really spend time digging in. So that seems appropriate. Yeah. And Dr. Boyd, did you have?
No, I was just gonna, it's related to that, but a little bit, somewhat related, but a little bit different than the conversation we had. I think, but it's related to supervision, and perhaps this gets lumped into the same conversation if we're going to have a broader discussion about it, but looking at following similar policy and regulation to the Board of Psychology, which prohibits associates from having to pay supervisors for supervision. If that needs to be a separate item, perhaps we could do that, or if this could be part of a larger conversation. But I think that's something we should discuss as well.
Thank you. Any other board member suggestions for agenda items? Okay. Do we have any in-house audience members wishing to suggest future agenda items? All right, moderator, do we have any online comments for item 28?
All right, WebEx, if you have a suggestion for a future agenda item, raise a hand by tapping that hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise your hand, and we will call on people in the order we have requests. Let's take a few seconds now to see if we have a request for public comment. Seeing no request, you wish to continue?
Yes, thank you. On to item 29, public comment for items not on the agenda. We'll now open for public comments. As a reminder, the board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during this public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda of a future meeting. Each commenter will have 2 minutes. Do we have any board members with comments for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have any in-house audience with comments not on the agenda? Us too. Moderator, do we have any comments for item 29?
All right, WebEx, time to raise a hand for items not on the agenda. You can do that by tapping the hand button at the bottom of the screen. Dial in users, dial *3 to raise your hand. And our first request is coming from Elise Springer. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Elise Springer, a volunteer with the California chapter of Postpartum Support International. It's nice to see you all online again virtually. I am wanting to bring to the board's attention just a reminder that at the last board meeting, there was a determination that there would be more public awareness on perinatal mental health. I also, so I'm just asking to kind of remind you all that we are here. We're still very passionate about this. We really see this as a lifespan development issue and encourage the board to see it in the same way, and to let the board know that there was a recent case in Massachusetts of infanticide in which the mental health providers are being sued for missed and misdiagnosis of postpartum psychosis as a result of bipolar disorder. And again, wanted to just bring that to the board's attention because it means that the clinicians under the aegis of the board would also likely be vulnerable if that case is precedent setting. So again, just wanted to bring that to a board's attention that the clinicians in that case are being sued for missed and misdiagnosis in perinatal mental health. As a result of that, many of the clinicians in that state have been reaching out to Postpartum Support International and other organizations in a panic because there is a lack of basic and shared training. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Rick McCarthy. Hold on just a moment, please. We're sending you a request to unmute your microphone.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick McCarthy, LMFT, former subject matter expert and oral examiner for this board. In 2003, this board discontinued the oral examination, and though well-intentioned, California eliminated its only direct method for assessing applied competence at the point of independent licensure for LMFTs. This is the pivotal motivation that compelled me to advocate to reinstate the oral exams. Since 2003, many of my professional colleagues and I have noticed a consistent increase of intakes complaining about the incompetence and unprofessional treatment with more recently licensed clinicians. Because of my 12 years as an oral examiner for this board, I am able to appreciate that since 2003, roughly half the candidates that I would have accurately assessed as incompetent are now in practice as licensed therapists. Here is a critical point. Research across healthcare and professional services consistently shows that only a small fraction, around 5% of clients who are harmed, poorly served, or dissatisfied, ever file a formal complaint. Most harm is never reported, never investigated, and never counted. The good news is that correcting this is both imperative and possible. Newly developed structured oral and performance-based exams using standardized scenarios directly resolve the concerns that led to discontinuation in 2003. This is not a return to the past. It is a correction using better tools. I am also in consulting with Senator Tony Strickland's office
15 seconds.
On the legislative pathway to reinstate the oral examination for licensure. Regardless of legislation, however, this issue goes directly to the board's public protection mandate. Written exams tell us what applicants know. Oral exams tell us how they put that knowledge.
Thank you for your comment. Next, we're going to hear from Anna. Hold on just a moment, please. We're going to send you a request to unmute your microphone. It looks like you're on a mobile device. Your request may not be at the bottom. You may need to hit the ellipses button, the ... in order to cycle through your pages. We're sending you that request now.
There, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. My name's Anna. I'm a recently licensed clinical social worker, and I have a question for the board here. And it's regarding about the Department of Education, how they're looking to limit the degrees of that are considered professional for student loan limits, and that does impact our work here in mental health and counseling. So I'm wondering if the board has any kind of power to advocate on this action. Yes, that's my question. I hope that makes sense, and I'm happy to clarify further.
All right. Thank you for your comment. I believe it was stated earlier that the board can listen to your comment. It's not a question and answer session at this point.
Oh, okay, okay, I understand. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. And those are all of our requests for public comment at the moment.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we'll be moving to item 30, which is adjournment. Thank you all for participating. We hope to see you at our next board meeting on May 7th and 8th. And with that, our meeting is adjourned. And because y'all like it so much, we'll do this.